In April 1912, over 2,200 people boarded the largest moving object ever built, enclosed in a floating palace of unprecedented luxury, surrounded by crystal, mahogany and silver. For the wealthiest passengers, life aboard Titanic was a dazzling display of Edwardian opulence, all while steaming toward an unimaginable fate. Here's what life was really like as a first-class passenger on the Titanic. So yeah, if these help you fall asleep, subscribe. Also, what time is it for you right now? Someone from London told me they listen at 3 a.m. Meanwhile, someone in Seattle uses these on their drive to work, which feels risky, but whatever works. We're heading to the Titanic in a minute. First though, get comfortable. Seriously, take a second. Adjust whatever needs adjusting. You're not going to want to move once we start.
In April 1912,
your eyes open to the soft morning light streaming through the tall windows of your London hotel room. It's April 10th, 1912, and today is no ordinary day. Your hands press against the crisp Egyptian cotton sheets one last time before you swing your legs over the side of the bed. The plush carpet feels warm against your bare feet, a stark contrast to what awaits you on the Atlantic Ocean. 7 o'clock, madam, comes a voice with a gentle knock. Your lady's maid enters with a tray of tea and toast. We should begin preparations if you're to make the boat train on time. You've been anticipating this day for months. The maiden voyage of the RMS Titanic, the newest, largest, and most luxurious ocean liner ever built, and you have a first-class ticket. Is everything packed, you ask, sipping the perfectly brewed Earl Grey. Nearly all, madam. Just your morning things remain, she replies, already laying out your travelling suit, a tailored wool affair in navy blue with a matching hat. Packing for an ocean crossing isn't simple. You need outfits for every possible occasion. Morning walks on the deck, afternoon teas, formal dinners. God forbid you'd be caught wearing the same evening gown twice. Think about it. Your comfortable bed at home has been replaced by 4 steamer trunks full of clothes. 4, and that's not even counting the hat boxes. The clothing requirements for first-class passage are practically a mathematical equation. For women, at least 1 tailor-made suit, 1 pair of thick silk or woolen tights, 4 sets of combination undergarments, several shirtwaists, a sweater, a woolen wrap for trips to the bath, a dressy bodice for dinner, proper shoes, and 3 pairs of pyjamas. And men don't get off any easier. They need to pack a black dinner coat, shirts for evening attire, a regular suit, woolen underclothing, handkerchiefs, socks, pyjamas, a bathrobe, slippers, and, here's the kicker, a mix of ties and detachable starched shirt collars. I mean, imagine having to pack different shirt collars. That's how you know you're in 1912. Wait till you see what people wear to dinner. Hold up, I'm getting ahead of myself. Breakfast finished, your maid helps you dress. First the chemise and drawers, then the corset pulled tight but not too tight for travelling, petticoats, and finally the wool travelling suit. Your hair is pinned up meticulously beneath your hat. A touch of powder, a dab of perfume, and you're ready. Downstairs, the hotel staff has arranged for your mountain of luggage to be loaded onto an automobile. You can't help but wonder if you've overpacked, but the thought quickly vanishes. Better to have too much than too little when sailing with the elite of society. The White Star dock at Southampton, please, you tell the driver. The excitement in the air is palpable as you arrive at Waterloo Station. The special boat train, nicknamed the Titanic Special, awaits to carry passengers directly to the Southampton docks. The platform buzzes with activity, porters rushing with luggage, families saying tearful goodbyes, journalists scribbling notes. Did you see the passenger list in the paper? Your friend whispers as you settle into the plush first-class compartment. The Astors are sailing, and the Guggenheims. You nod knowingly. This maiden voyage has attracted the wealthiest and most prominent figures in society. The prospect of rubbing shoulders with such illustrious company over the coming days sends a little thrill down your spine. Look at everyone checking their pocket watches, you observe. The gentleman across from you has glanced at his timepiece 3 times in the last 5 minutes. Everyone's anticipation is reaching a fever pitch. The train journey from London to Southampton takes about an hour and a half, but it feels like days. You try to focus on your book, but your mind keeps wandering to thoughts of the ship. You've seen the advertisements in the papers. The Queen of the Ocean, they're calling her. Practically unsinkable. Your friends who travelled on Olympic, Titanic's slightly older sister ship, have raved about the luxurious staterooms, the state-of-the-art amenities, the sumptuous dining, and Titanic is supposed to be even more magnificent. And then, as the train nears Southampton, someone across the aisle gasps loudly. There she is. Everyone rushes to the windows. In the distance, you can make out 4 massive funnels rising against the sky. As the train pulls closer, the full scale of the vessel becomes apparent, and your breath catches in your throat. "Good Lord," mutters the gentleman beside you. "She's massive." That's putting it mildly. Titanic is absolutely enormous. 882 feet of gleaming black hull towering above the dock, her white superstructure crowned with those distinctive buff-coloured funnels with black tops. She makes every other ship in the harbour look like a child's toy. The train finally stops at the dockside station, and you descend into a flurry of activity. Porters swarm the train, collecting luggage. Photographers snap pictures. Vendors sell souvenirs and newspapers. The air smells of coal smoke, salt water, and excitement. "You know they're saying she cost $7.5 million to build," says your friend as your luggage is loaded onto a cart. "Can you imagine?" That's equivalent to about $210 million today. But honestly, looking up at this floating palace, it seems like a bargain. The White Star Line has arranged everything with military precision. Your steamer trunks are sorted into 2 categories. Those wanted for the voyage, which will go straight to your stateroom, and those not wanted, which will be stored in the ship's hold until New York. You notice little numbered stickers on all your cases, marked with your name and cabin number. And speaking of cabins, unlike the 2nd and 3rd class passengers who boarded earlier and had to endure lengthy inspection queues, you breeze through a quick ticket check and customs formality. A White Star Line official escorts you toward the 1st class gangway. "Your stateroom is on B deck, madam," he says with a slight bow. "One of our finest." The gangway to the 1st class entrance is unlike the crowded ramps used by lesser passengers. It's a separate elevated walkway that leads directly to B deck. As you approach, you take one final look at the towering hull from the outside. The ship is so tall that you have to crane your neck to see the boat deck far above. You can't help but feel a mixture of excitement and the slightest touch of unease at the sheer scale of it all. "It's like walking into a building, not boarding a ship," your friend whispers. You take a deep breath and step across the threshold. The transformation is immediate and dramatic. One moment you're on an industrial dockside, the next you're in what appears to be the corridor of an elegant English country estate or luxury hotel. The ship gently sways beneath your feet, the only reminder that you're on a vessel at all. Your eyes dart from detail to detail, struggling to take it all in. Rich oak panelling lines the walls, plush carpets muffle your footsteps, electric lights in ornate fixtures cast a warm glow over everything. Every surface gleams with polish and care. "Ma'am, if you'll follow me to the purser's office," says a steward in a crisp uniform, "you'll want to make your arrangements for the voyage." This, you quickly learn, is where the real business of first-class travel begins. The purser's office is the nerve centre of passenger services. Here, you can book your deck chair at an additional fee, reserve tables for dining, deposit valuables in the ship's safe, and handle any special requests. The line is considerable, a testament to the ship's full booking, and as you wait, you overhear a steward speaking in hushed but clearly flustered tones about a passenger complaint. Mrs. Shelley says her stateroom is little more than a cell, he whispers to another crew member, says it's bitterly cold and impossibly thin-walled, insists she must have been put into second class by mistake. The other steward rolls his eyes slightly. The White Star Line might have gone a bit overboard with their advertisements. Some of the first-class cabins are indeed small and quite bare. I'll speak to the purser. You make a mental note. Perhaps your B-deck stateroom was a wise choice after all. With your arrangements made and valuables safely deposited, another steward appears to escort you to your cabin. He leads you through a labyrinthine series of corridors. If not for the occasional gentle roll of the ship, you might think you were in an expensive hotel. Here we are, madam. Stateroom B64. The door swings open and you step into what will be your home for the next week. Unlike some of the more basic first-class accommodations, yours is truly luxurious, decorated in the Louis XV style with elegant white and gold mouldings. A comfortable bed with fine linens dominates one wall. There's a small sofa upholstered in silk damask, a writing desk, a marble-topped washstand, and ample closet space. You notice something unusual by the bed, an electric heater, such a modern convenience. You can't resist turning it on to take the slight chill from the air. Your luggage will arrive shortly, madam, the steward informs you. Would you like me to unpack for you, or will your maid be handling that? Before you can answer, there's a knock at the door. It's your friends from the train, their faces flushed with excitement. You must come up to the boat deck, they insist. They're about to cast off, and everyone's gathering to wave goodbye. You hadn't planned to leave your cabin until you'd freshened up, but the infectious enthusiasm is impossible to resist. Following your friends, you make your way through the ship and up the magnificent grand staircase. The staircase alone is worth the price of admission, a soaring multi-deck masterpiece crowned with a wrought iron and glass dome that floods the space with natural light. At the centre landing, an ornate clock is flanked by carved wooden figures representing honour and glory crowning time. It's so grand that several passengers have stopped to photograph it. Can you imagine coming down these stairs in your evening gown? Your friend whispers. After climbing several flights, you emerge onto the open air of the boat deck. The April breeze is cool but pleasant, carrying the scent of sea salt. The deck is crowded with passengers, some chatting excitedly, others waving to loved ones on the dock below. You find a spot at the rail and look down. The distance to the water is dizzying. From this height, the people on the dock look like tiny dolls. All around you, the atmosphere is festive. Children run between the adults' legs while their parents call after them. A woman nearby dabs at tears while simultaneously waving a handkerchief. A group of young men are taking swigs from a hidden flask, toasting the voyage. I heard they delayed the departure, someone near you says. Something about a near collision with another ship. Indeed, there seems to be some commotion in the harbour. A smaller vessel, the SS New York, appears to have broken its moorings and is drifting uncomfortably close to Titanic's massive hull. "Look at that," a gentleman exclaims. "The suction from our propellers must have pulled her loose." You watch as tugboats scramble to intercept the drifting ship. It's a tense few minutes, but disaster is averted as the New York is secured before a collision can occur. "Not the most auspicious start to our journey," your friend remarks with a nervous laugh, but the delay is brief. Soon the final preparations resume, and a deep, resonant blast from Titanic's whistle echoes across the harbour, 3 long notes announcing imminent departure. The sound is physically felt as much as heard, vibrating in your chest. Around you, passengers cheer and wave with renewed vigour. Then comes a subtle shift beneath your feet, so gentle you might have imagined it, if not for the gradual widening gap between ship and shore. Titanic is moving, almost imperceptibly at first, then with gathering momentum. On the dock, handkerchiefs wave like a field of white flowers. Some people are running alongside the ship for as long as they can, calling final goodbyes. Others simply stand and watch the magnificent vessel begin her maiden journey. As Southampton slowly recedes, you feel a strange mix of excitement and melancholy. The threshold between land and sea has been crossed. For the next week, this floating palace will be your entire world. "Shall we explore?" your friend suggests, eyes bright with anticipation. And so begins your first day aboard the ship of dreams, unaware of what fate awaits just 4 days hence. But for now, there's a sense of limitless possibility as Titanic steams majestically into the open waters, carrying you toward adventure. "I can't believe we're actually on the Titanic," your friend whispers, squeezing your arm. "Can you imagine the stories we'll tell when we reach New York?" Little do you know that the stories of this voyage will indeed be told, but not in the way anyone aboard could possibly imagine. The Titanic steams away from Southampton, and you're struck by how smoothly such an enormous vessel moves through the water. The gentle vibration beneath your feet is the only real indication you're at sea. Well, that and the endless blue stretching out on all sides. "Shall we see what other treasures this floating palace has to offer?" your friend suggests, looping her arm through yours. You nod eagerly and begin what will become a proper exploration. Walking away from the railing, you notice how spacious the boat deck feels. Nothing like the cramped steamers you've travelled on before. There's room to stroll, to breathe, to exist without constantly bumping elbows with strangers. An older gentleman tips his hat as he passes. "First crossing?" he asks. "On the Titanic, yes," you reply, "though I sailed on the Mauretania last summer," he chuckles. "You'll find this quite the upgrade, madam. I was on Olympic last year. Same design, but they've added some lovely touches to her sister here. The private promenade decks for the parlour suites are divine. Not that I could afford one, mind you." As he moves on, your friend whispers, "That was Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon. His wife is the famous fashion designer, Madame Lucille." Already you're brushing shoulders with the elite. This voyage promises to be as much about who you meet as where you're going. Descending the grand staircase, you pause on a deck where double doors open into the first-class lounge. You can't resist peeking inside. The room is spectacular, decorated in the Louis XV style with ornate white and gold panelling, deep carpets and delicate furniture arranged in intimate groupings. A magnificent fireplace, electric of course, no actual fires at sea, dominates one wall. Tall windows flood the space with natural light, while crystal chandeliers stand ready to illuminate evening gatherings. "This is where the ladies will retreat after dinner," explains a passing steward who notices your appreciative gaze, while the gentlemen enjoy the smoking room. "Separate spaces?" you ask, slightly amused. "Traditional shipboard etiquette, madam," he replies, with a practised smile. "Though nobody will stop you if you prefer to join the gentlemen. Times are changing, after all." Times are changing indeed, though not quickly enough for your taste. Still, you're not here to challenge social conventions, at least not on your first day. Moving on, you discover the reading and writing room, a serene space designed specifically for the ladies. Several women are already settled in comfortable chairs, penning letters or reading novels from the ship's library. Just think, your friend muses, in a few days we'll be sending wireless messages from the middle of the Atlantic. What would our grandmothers say? Mine would call it witchcraft, you laugh, then demand to send one herself. The Titanic's wireless room is buzzing with activity. At $1 per word, messages aren't cheap, but that hasn't deterred the wealthy passengers from sending announcements of their presence on this historic voyage. You continue your tour, wandering past the Café Parisien, a charming spot designed to give the feel of a Parisian sidewalk cafe, complete with wicker furniture and trellises. It's an innovative space for a ship, offering a more relaxed alternative to the formal dining saloon. We simply must take tea there tomorrow, your friend insists. As you wander, the ship's scale becomes more apparent. The corridors seem endless, each turning revealing another elegant passage or stairwell. It would be easy to get lost if not for the helpful crew members stationed throughout. "Excuse me, but is that the squash court I've heard about?" you ask one such steward, noticing a sign. "Yes, madam, down on the lower deck. One of the only squash courts at sea. 2 shillings per game, rackets and balls provided. The physical instructor will even play as your opponent if needed. You make a mental note to perhaps try it later in the voyage. You've never played squash, but when else would you have the chance to do so in the middle of the ocean? Speaking of unique opportunities, you've heard whispers of the ship's swimming bath, another marvel of modern engineering, an actual swimming pool filled with heated salt water deep within the hull of the ship. Shall we see if we can find it, you suggest? Your exploration takes you deeper into the ship down to F deck, where the pool is located. Along the way, you pass the gymnasium, which requires its own ticket, and peek through the windows. Inside are the most modern exercise machines, rowing devices, stationary bicycles, even electric horses and camels that simulate riding. "Look at that," your friend whispers, pointing at a woman in a divided skirt astride the electric camel. "Mrs. Astor, I believe." The famous Madeline Astor, whose husband John Jacob Astor is reportedly the richest man aboard, rides the mechanical beast with impressive poise. The gymnasium instructor, a fit young man in white flannels, stands nearby offering encouragement. "That camel looks ridiculous," a voice says behind you. You turn to see a young woman about your age, her expression amused. "I tried it yesterday on Olympic. Felt nothing like actual camel riding, believe me." "You've ridden real camels?" your friend asks, impressed. "In Egypt last winter. Far dustier affair, I assure you." She extends her hand. "Margaret Brown. Friends call me Maggie." You introduce yourselves, immediately charmed by this forthright woman with her American accent and confident manner. "Are you headed to the swimming bath?" she asks. "I was just going myself. First time at sea, they've managed to keep the water from sloshing out with the ship's movement. Some clever engineering trick." You accept her invitation, and the three of you continue down to F deck, where the pool awaits. The bath is impressive, 30 feet long by 14 feet wide, filled with heated salt water. Several gentlemen are already enjoying a swim, while attendants stand by with fluffy towels. "Ladies' swimming hours begin at 2, an attendant informs you apologetically, but you're welcome to reserve a time. Next to the swimming bath is another of the ship's innovations, the Turkish baths. For an additional fee of $1, first-class gentlemen can enjoy the steam room, hot room, temperate room, and cooling room during the morning hours. Ladies are permitted between 2 and 5 in the afternoon. Worth every penny, Maggie Brown assures you. The cooling room is straight out of Arabian Nights, all blue tiles and teak furniture. Makes you forget you're on a ship entirely. Your new American friend proves to be a wealth of information, having travelled extensively on various ocean liners. As you make your way back up through the ship, she points out features you might have missed and shares gossip about some of the notable passengers. The Wideners are hosting a private dinner party the final night, she confides. Very exclusive. Invitations are the talk of first class. By now, your initial tour has brought you almost full circle back to the upper decks. Your stomach reminds you that breakfast was hours ago, and it's well past luncheon time. The Palm Court should be serving tea soon, Maggie suggests. Shall we? The Palm Court is yet another elegant space filled with potted palms and rattan furniture, a tropical oasis in the middle of the Atlantic. A small orchestra plays quietly in the corner as stewards move efficiently between tables with trays of tea, finger sandwiches and pastries. You settle at a table by the windows, watching the coastline of England grow more distant. The tea service is impeccable. Fine bone china, sterling silver and linen so crisp it practically crackles when unfolded. To new friends and new adventures, Maggie raises her teacup in a toast. As you sip your Darjeeling and nibble on cucumber sandwiches, the conversation flows easily between observations about the ship and plans for New York. Maggie, it turns out, is returning from an extended European tour and has a wealth of stories about her travels. "Did you hear we'll be stopping at Cherbourg this evening?" she mentions. "And Queenstown tomorrow, then it's open ocean all the way to New York." "I'd almost forgotten we weren't properly at sea yet," you admit. The ship's gentle movement and incredible stability have made it easy to forget you're on a vessel at all. Time passes pleasantly in conversation, and before you know it, the light outside the windows has begun to shift toward late afternoon. You excuse yourself to return to your stateroom, where your maid has already unpacked your trunks and laid out options for dinner attire. "Not the full evening dress tonight, Emily," you tell her. "I understand the first night is more relaxed." "Very good, madam. Perhaps the navy dinner dress with the silver trim?" As Emily helps you change, you catch her up on your impressions of the ship. Even the servants' accommodations are a step above other vessels, though naturally not as luxurious as passenger cabins. Emily seems pleased with her berth, shared with only one other lady's maid, rather than the dormitory-style accommodations on lesser ships. "The stewards have been most helpful," she reports, fastening the tiny buttons running down your spine, "and the food in the servants' hall is remarkably good." Dressed for dinner, you make your way to the reception room outside the first-class dining saloon on D-deck. This elegant space serves as a gathering point before meals, allowing passengers to mingle and perhaps form dinner parties if they're travelling alone. The reception room buzzes with conversation as passengers compare notes on their staterooms and share first impressions of the ship. Through the wide entrances to the dining saloon, you can see stewards putting final touches on the tables, adjusting crystal, straightening silver, ensuring everything is perfect. "I hear they've delayed our departure from Cherbourg," someone mentions nearby. "Some issue with the tenders." Indeed, looking out the windows, you can see that the ship has slowed as it approaches the French port. Cherbourg's harbour isn't deep enough to accommodate a vessel of Titanic's size, so passengers and mail must be ferried out by smaller boats. "We won't be allowed ashore, will we?" your friend asks a passing officer. "I'm afraid not, madam," he replies. "Just a brief stop to take on passengers and mail. We should be underway again within 2 hours." A steward sounds a small gong, signalling that dinner is served. Unlike the formal announcement you'll experience on subsequent evenings, when a bugler will play "The Roast Beef of Old England," this first night is less ceremonial. You enter the first-class dining saloon, and once again Titanic's scale takes your breath away. The room is enormous, the largest space on the ship, able to seat over 500 passengers at once. White-panelled walls rise to a ceiling adorned with intricate mouldings and sparkling crystal light fixtures. The floor is covered in blue linoleum tiles arranged in elegant patterns. Your table, madam. A steward guides you to a table for 6 where you're joined by Maggie Brown and 2 other couples. Just wait until tomorrow night, Maggie tells you as you settle in. First night is always casual. Tomorrow you'll see the real display. Tiaras, family jewels and gowns straight from Paris. The dinner, despite being casual by Titanic standards, is still an elaborate affair. The menu offers multiple choices for each course. Consommé, salmon, roast duckling, sirloin of beef, pâté, fresh fruit and cheeses. Each dish is artfully presented on white star-lined china bordered in blue and gold. Throughout the meal, the atmosphere remains relaxed. Men haven't changed into full evening dress with tails, and ladies have forgone their most elaborate gowns. After all, many passengers are still settling in, and some are still boarding at Cherbourg. Through the windows, you catch glimpses of the smaller tender vessels approaching Titanic's towering hull. The SS Nomadic, specially designed to ferry first and second class passengers, looks like a toy beside the ocean liner. I hear the Duff Gordons are boarding at Cherbourg, someone mentions, and Benjamin Guggenheim. More millionaires per square foot than Newport in August, Maggie quips, earning laughs from around the table. Conversation flows as easily as the wine, touching on everything from politics to fashion to speculation about how quickly Titanic might cross the Atlantic on her maiden voyage. Captain Smith is known for setting records, one gentleman informs the table, though I understand White Star is more concerned with comfort than speed. Unlike Cunard, his wife adds, the Mauretania and Lusitania practically shake your teeth loose getting to New York a few hours sooner. I'd rather arrive rested than rattled, you contribute, earning nods of agreement. After dinner, unlike subsequent evenings when traditions will dictate that ladies retire to the lounge while gentlemen enjoy cigars and brandy in the smoking room, the mood remains casual and mixed. Some passengers drift toward the reception room for coffee, others head to the boat deck for fresh air, and a few make their way to the smoking room, regardless of convention. You choose to join a small group venturing up to the boat deck to watch as Titanic prepares to depart Cherbourg. The night air is cool but pleasant, and the French coast glitters with lights. The last of the tenders pulls away from the ship, now carrying departing visitors back to shore. With new passengers aboard, Titanic sounds her whistle, that same deep, resonant call that vibrates in your chest. Slowly, the massive vessel begins to move again, turning toward the open sea. Next stop Queenstown, someone nearby says. Then nothing but ocean for days. The thought sends an unexpected shiver down your spine. While Titanic feels as solid as any building on land, there's something humbling about the vast darkness of the sea surrounding you. From your vantage point high on the boat deck, the water seems very far below, black and mysterious in the night. A steward passes with a tray of hot chocolate, and you gratefully accept a cup, wrapping your fingers around its warmth. The rich, sweet scent rises with the steam, momentarily displacing the salt air. Some passengers have begun to drift inside, finding the wind too brisk now that the ship is gaining speed. Others linger at the rails, watching Cherbourg's lights grow smaller until they merge with the distant shoreline and finally disappear altogether. I think I'll turn in, your friend says with a small yawn. It's been quite a day. You nod in agreement. The excitement of boarding, exploring the ship and meeting new acquaintances has left you pleasantly exhausted. Besides, tomorrow promises more discoveries. The gymnasium, perhaps the Turkish baths, and certainly more acquaintances to be made. Making your way back to your stateroom, you find Emily has already turned down the bed and laid out your night clothes. The electric heater has taken the chill from the air, making the cabin wonderfully cosy. "Will there be anything else, madam?" she asks. "No, thank you, Emily. You may retire." Left alone, you move to the small porthole in your cabin and gaze out at the dark sea. The slight vibration of the engines creates a gentle, almost soothing hum. Combined with the subtle movement of the ship, it's surprisingly relaxing. As you prepare for bed, you reflect on this first day aboard the Titanic. The ship has already exceeded your expectations, not just in its luxury and scale, but in the sense of possibility it creates. For this 1 week, you exist in a world apart, a floating microcosm of Edwardian high society where every comfort is anticipated and provided. You slip between the crisp linen sheets, your body sinking into the comfortable mattress. The gentle rhythm of the ship lulls you towards sleep, even as your mind still buzzes with impressions of the day. The gleaming grand staircase, the palatial public rooms, the interesting characters you've met. Tomorrow will bring Queenstown, Ireland, and then the true Atlantic crossing begins. 6 days of steaming toward New York with nothing but Titanic's considerable amusements to occupy you. The thought brings a smile to your lips as you drift towards sleep, rocked by the gentle movement of the greatest ship in the world. Outside your window, the vast Atlantic stretches dark and endless as Titanic, lights blazing from hundreds of portholes, steams confidently westward, her 4 massive funnels silhouetted against the night sky. Morning comes with a gentle knock at your door. For a disorienting moment, you forget where you are until the subtle movement of the ship beneath you brings reality rushing back. You're aboard the Titanic, now fully at sea after yesterday's final stop at Queenstown, Ireland. "Good morning, madam," Emily says quietly, entering with a small tray. "I've brought your morning tea." The aroma of fresh Earl Grey fills the stateroom as Emily sets the tray on the bedside table and moves to open the curtains. Soft morning light spills through the porthole, dancing across the Louis XVI furnishings of your cabin. "What time is it?" you ask, sitting up against the plush pillows. "Just after 7, madam. We're at sea properly now. Left Ireland behind last night." You accept the delicate china cup, the tea perfectly brewed with just a splash of milk. Emily busies herself laying out your morning clothes while you sip and slowly wake. "The steward says it's quite fine out today," she reports, though a bit brisk on deck. "I've laid out your wool walking suit and the cashmere scarf." "Thank you, Emily. And what's the plan for today?" "The Atlantic Daily Bulletin is here," she says, handing you a single sheet of paper. It lists today's activities and some news from the wireless. The ship's daily newspaper, typed up by the wireless operators overnight, provides an essential link to the shore, even while at sea. Weather reports, stock prices, major news headlines, and even information on the ship's progress, all delivered to your cabin with your morning tea. Technology truly is remarkable. You scan the paper, noting a few items of interest. The ship made good progress overnight, the weather forecast is promising, and there's a concert scheduled in the first-class lounge this afternoon. After finishing your tea, you rise and prepare for the day with Emily's assistance. The morning ritual is familiar, washing at the marble-topped basin with hot water delivered by a steward, then dressing in layers starting with your combination undergarments, corset, looser for day wear, petticoats, and finally your walking suit. "I thought I might try the gymnasium this morning," you mention as Emily pins your hair. "Very good, madam. Shall I have your swimming costume ready for afterward? I hear the pool is quite marvellous." The The thought of a swim in the ship's heated pool is appealing after what will surely be a bracing walk on deck. You nod your agreement as Emily secures your hat with a final pin. Properly attired, you step out into the corridor. The ship feels alive with morning activity. Stewards hurrying with breakfast trays for those taking meals in their cabins, passengers emerging for early walks or heading to the dining saloon. You make your way to the first-class smoking room, where gentlemen are already gathering to read newspapers and discuss business. While traditionally a male domain, no one prevents you from entering to collect your own copy of the Atlantic Daily Bulletin. Inside, the room is rich with the scent of polished wood, leather, and the first cigars of the day. Designed in the style of an English gentleman's club, the smoking room features mahogany panelling, deep leather chairs, stained glass windows, and card tables where fortunes will likely change hands before the voyage ends. Several men glance up as you enter, a few nodding politely. One, an older gentleman with an impressive white moustache, actually rises from his seat. "Good morning, madam. May I be of assistance?" "I was just collecting a bulletin," you explain, gesturing to the stack on a side table. "Allow me," he says, retrieving one for you. "Colonel Archibald Gracie, at your service." You introduce yourself, and the colonel insists on pointing out items of interest in the bulletin, particularly the ship's progress overnight. 24 knots, steady as you please, he says with obvious admiration. White Star may prioritise comfort over speed, but Titanic's still making excellent time. Captain Smith knows his business. After thanking the Colonel for his courtesy, you exit with your bulletin and make your way toward the dining saloon. The grand staircase is already busy with passengers descending for breakfast, the great glass dome above flooding the space with morning light. The dining saloon doors stand open, stewards positioned on either side to welcome passengers. Inside, the vast room gleams with morning sunshine streaming through the large windows. Tables are immaculately set with white linens, silver, and the distinctive blue and gold-rimmed White Star Line china. "Good morning, madam," the head steward greets you. "Your table from last evening, or would you prefer to join others?" "My usual table, please." He leads you to a table by the windows where, to your delight, Maggie Brown is already seated, along with another couple you met last night. "There you are," Maggie calls cheerfully. "I was just telling the bishops about my plans to try the Turkish bath later. Care to join me?" You settle into your chair as a steward unfolds a napkin across your lap, and another appears instantly with coffee. "I was thinking of visiting the gymnasium first," you reply. "Perhaps the baths afterward." "Excellent plan. I hear the electric camel is quite the experience." Maggie's eyes twinkle with mischief, though what it has to do with proper exercise I couldn't say. A steward appears at your elbow with breakfast menus, though they're hardly necessary. The first-class breakfast spread is legendary. Everything from simple porridge to elaborate egg dishes, fish, meat, pastries, and fruit. "What looks good this morning?" you ask, scanning the extensive options. "The grilled mutton chops are excellent," Mr. Bishop offers, "and they do a very good omelette." You finally decide on oatmeal with cream, followed by smoked salmon and poached eggs. As you place your order, you can't help but marvel at the logistics required to serve such varied and fresh food in the middle of the ocean. "I heard they've got 40,000 eggs in cold storage," Maggie says, seemingly reading your thoughts, "and enough fresh meat to feed an army. The kitchen is something to behold, like a small city down there." "Have you seen it?" Mrs. Bishop asks, surprised. "I make it my business to see everything," Maggie replies with a wink. "Slipped the head chef a little something, and he was happy to show me around. 40 chefs and cooks working in organised chaos. Quite the operation." Your breakfast arrives promptly. The oatmeal steaming in a silver-rimmed bowl, the salmon artfully arranged beside perfectly poached eggs. The first bite confirms that the quality matches the presentation. The dining saloon fills gradually as morning progresses, the gentle murmur of conversation and clink of silverware creating a pleasant backdrop. Through the windows you can see the ocean stretching to the horizon, surprisingly calm today with just a gentle swell that causes the slightest rocking motion. I heard the Astors finally emerged from their suite, Mrs. Bishop says quietly, leaning in. Apparently they took all their meals privately yesterday. Well, they are on their honeymoon, Maggie points out, and with all the gossip about their age difference, I don't blame them for wanting privacy. The Astors' marriage had indeed been scandalous. John Jacob Astor IV, at 47, had divorced his first wife to marry 18-year-old Madeleine. They'd been travelling in Egypt and Paris, hoping the gossip would die down before returning to New York. They say his suite has a private promenade deck, Mr. Bishop adds. Probably hasn't felt the need to emerge. You finish your breakfast as the conversation flows around you, touching on fellow passengers, upcoming shipboard activities and predictions about the Atlantic weather. Well, I'm off to the gymnasium, you announce, dabbing your lips with your napkin. Anyone care to join me? Maggie agrees enthusiastically, while the bishops decline in favour of a morning constitutional around the boat deck. You and Maggie make your way up to the boat deck, where the gymnasium is located just aft of the officers' quarters. The morning air is bracingly fresh when you step outside, the wind carrying the scent of salt spray. "Now this is proper sea air," Maggie exclaims, taking a deep breath. "Makes you feel alive, doesn't it?" The deck is already busy with early walkers getting their exercise, some power striding with serious expressions, others strolling leisurely while chatting. A few hardy souls have claimed deck chairs despite the cool morning, bundled in blankets while they read or simply gaze at the ocean. The gymnasium door stands open, and inside you find several passengers already using the equipment under the watchful eye of the physical educator, Mr. Macaulay, a fit young man in impeccable white flannels. "Good morning, ladies," he greets you cheerfully. "First time in our gymnasium, you'll need tickets, 1 shilling each, available at the purser's office." Maggie produces 2 tickets from her handbag with a flourish. "Already handled. Now show us these famous electric beasts of yours." The gymnasium is a bright, modern space with white oak panelling and large windows offering views of the passing ocean. The equipment ranges from familiar to utterly foreign. Dumbbells and Indian clubs, rowing machines, stationary bicycles, a peculiar contraption for back and stomach massage, and of course the infamous electric camel and horse. The electric horse simulates a trot or canter, Macaulay explains, demonstrating the strange device which rocks back and forth with mechanical precision. Excellent for the digestion and posture, very popular with the gentlemen. "And the camel?" you inquire, eyeing the bizarre contraption sceptically. "Similar principle, but with a different motion. More of a camel's gait. The ladies find it most beneficial for the waistline." You exchange a glance with Maggie, both of you struggling to maintain proper decorum. "I believe I'll try it," Maggie announces boldly. "When else will I ride a camel without the sand and heat?" While Maggie mounts the electric beast with surprising grace, you opt for one of the stationary bicycles. Macaulay shows you how to adjust the resistance and operate the meter that tracks your theoretical distance travelled. "We have some ladies who race each other," he mentions. "Mrs. Candy and Mrs. Dodge have quite the rivalry going, 10 miles yesterday before luncheon." As you pedal, watching the meter tick upward, you observe your fellow passengers, a mix of ages and body types, all earnestly working up a light sweat in their exercise attire. Women wear practical divided skirts or loose gym wear, while men sport loose flannel trousers and light shirts, far from the formal attire seen throughout the rest of the ship. "This camel is nothing like the real thing," Maggie calls over, bouncing rhythmically. "Far too smooth. Real camels are dreadful, jerky creatures. This is more like I don't know what. Perhaps that's why it's popular," you suggest. "All the prestige of saying you've ridden the camel with none of the discomfort." After 20 minutes of steady pedalling, you've worked up a healthy glow. Macaulay appears with a cup of water for both you and Maggie, who has now moved on to the rowing machine. "Most ladies take a turn on the mechanical horse before finishing," he suggests. "Excellent for posture." You decide to try it, if only for the novelty. The mechanical horse rocks methodically beneath you, nothing like a real horse's movement, but oddly soothing nonetheless. You can see why it's popular, especially for passengers unaccustomed to physical activity. Do many women use the gymnasium? You ask Macaulay as you dismount. "Oh yes, quite a good number. Ladies' hours are 10 till 1, and we're usually busy. The electric camel is quite the draw." He lowers his voice slightly. "Between us, I think some come just to say they've tried it, a conversation piece for dinner parties back home." After thanking Macaulay for his attention, you and Maggie depart, pleasantly exercised and ready for your next activity. "Turkish baths," Maggie suggests. "Ladies' hours start at 2, but we could reserve spots now." "Let's do that, and perhaps visit the swimming bath in between. I hear it's quite remarkable." You make your way back inside and down the main companionway to F deck, where both the swimming bath and Turkish baths are located. The ship seems to go on forever, deck after deck, connected by elegant staircases and electric elevators that make navigation surprisingly easy despite Titanic's vast size. The swimming bath attendant is pleased to take your reservation, explaining that the pool is currently in use by gentlemen, but will be available to ladies at 11 o'clock. "The water is kept at a comfortable temperature, madam," he assures you. "Heated salt water, very buoyant. Towels and swimming costumes are available if needed." From there you continue to the Turkish bath entrance, where another attendant books your afternoon appointment. "I'll put you down for 2 o'clock, ladies. That's $1 each. The cooling room is particularly fine, done up in the Moorish style with blue tiles and teak furniture. Many ladies come just to sit there after using the steam room. With your afternoon plans arranged, you and Maggie decide to part ways temporarily. She wishes to write letters before lunch, while you're inclined to explore more of the ship. "Meet you at the swimming bath at 11, she suggests. "Perfect. I think I'll take a turn around the boat deck first." As you part ways, you realise how quickly shipboard acquaintances develop into something resembling friendship. The closed environment of the ship, combined with shared experiences, creates a unique social atmosphere where traditional introduction protocols relax somewhat. Back on the boat deck, the morning sun has warmed the air considerably. More passengers have emerged for their daily constitutional, the unwritten rule being at least 10 circuits of the deck for proper exercise. You join the slow parade of walkers, falling into the established counterclockwise flow. The deck is wide enough for pairs to walk comfortably side by side, allowing for conversation. Occasionally, someone stops at the railing to gaze out at the endless blue or point out a distant ship on the horizon. "Beautiful morning," comments an elderly gentleman as he passes you for the second time, clearly maintaining a faster pace. "Indeed it is," you reply, smiling at his determined stride. Looking out at the ocean, you're struck by the curious sense of isolation. Despite being surrounded by hundreds of fellow passengers and crew, Titanic feels like a world unto itself, a floating island of Edwardian luxury in the middle of the vast Atlantic. The sun glints off the waves, creating a dazzling display of light. The air tastes of salt and possibility. For this brief interlude between Southampton and New York, normal life is suspended. No obligations beyond deciding which of the ship's pleasures to indulge in next. As you complete your third circuit of the deck, you notice a small group gathered at the starboard rail, pointing at something in the distance. Curious, you join them. "Dolphins," a young girl explains excitedly, pointing. "A whole pod of them." Sure enough, sleek grey forms leap and play in the ship's wake, seemingly racing the massive vessel. Their joyful acrobatics bring smiles to even the most reserved passengers. You linger at the rail, watching the natural spectacle and enjoying the fresh air. Time seems to slow, marked only by the steady thrum of the engines far below and the rhythmic splash of waves against the hull. This is the magic of an Atlantic crossing. These moments of unexpected delight, the luxury of time stretching before you, and the curious blend of freedom and containment that only exists at sea. As the ship's clock chimes 11 bells, you remember your swimming appointment with Maggie. With one last look at the playful dolphins, you turn back toward the interior of the ship, ready for your next adventure aboard the floating palace that is RMS Titanic. You make your way down to F deck, where both the swimming bath and Turkish baths are located. The deeper you go into the ship, the more noticeable the engine vibration becomes. A gentle, steady hum that reminds you you're on a moving vessel, despite all evidence to the contrary in the luxurious upper decks. The swimming bath attendant greets you with a crisp bow. "Good morning, madam. Your friend Mrs. Brown has already arrived and is changing. Would you care to use one of our swimming costumes, or have you brought your own?" You've brought your own. A navy wool affair with white trim that's far more practical than fashionable. Not that fashion matters much in a ladies-only swimming hour. The changing room is small but elegant, with wooden lockers and benches. Maggie is just emerging in her own swimming costume, a rather daring red and black striped number that would raise eyebrows on any beach in America. "There you are," she exclaims. "I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost. This ship is a proper maze, isn't it?" "Dolphins," you explain, "on the starboard side. I lost track of time watching them." "Well, you haven't missed anything. I've just peeked at the pool. It's marvellous. Actual swimming. On a ship. What will they think of next?" After changing, you follow Maggie through another door into the pool area proper. The swimming bath is a rectangular pool, 30 feet long by 14 feet wide, surrounded by a tiled deck. Electric lights illuminate the space, supplementing the natural light from small portholes high on one wall. The most remarkable thing is the water itself, perfectly still despite the motion of the ship. Some clever engineering feat prevents the water from sloshing with the vessel's movement, making actual swimming possible. How do they manage that, you wonder aloud? "Baffles," replies a woman already swimming. She pauses at the pool's edge, pushing wet hair from her forehead. "My husband's in shipbuilding. Says they've installed baffles beneath the surface that break up the wave motion. Same principle they use to stabilize the ship itself, just adapted for the pool." You thank her for the explanation and gingerly test the water with your toes. It's pleasantly warm, heated salt water that feels somehow silkier than fresh water. "Oh, just get in already," Maggie laughs, stepping past you and descending the small ladder into the deeper end. She submerges herself completely, emerging with a delighted gasp. Divine, absolutely divine. You follow more cautiously, adapting to the curious sensation of swimming in a contained body of water that itself is moving across the ocean. The salt water's buoyancy makes floating effortless. You close your eyes for a moment, suspended in the warm water, and experience a curious sensation of timelessness, as if you're floating in some liminal space between worlds. "Race you," Maggie challenges, breaking your reverie. For the next half hour, you and the other women enjoy the unique pleasure of swimming in the middle of the Atlantic. Some do laps with serious determination, others simply float and chat. One young woman demonstrates an impressive dive from the pool's edge, earning spontaneous applause. That's enough exercise for one morning, Maggie eventually declares, hauling herself out via the ladder. I've worked up quite an appetite. Luncheon next, I think, before our appointment at the baths. You agree, and after changing back into your day clothes, make your way up to the dining saloon. First-class luncheon is served from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m, less formal than dinner, but still an elegant affair with multiple courses and impeccable service. The dining saloon is about half full when you arrive, many passengers preferring a lighter lunch at the Café Parisien or Veranda Café on days with fine weather. You and Maggie are shown to a table by the windows, giving you a splendid view of the ocean rushing past. Quite a morning we've had, Maggie remarks, unfolding her napkin. Electric camels and salt water swimming. My friends back in Denver would never believe it. Mine either, you agree, though I'm saving the Turkish baths for my most detailed letters home. I can already hear my mother's scandalized reaction. A steward appears with menus, reciting the day's specials with practiced precision. The luncheon options are extensive. Several soups, fish dishes, cold buffet items, grilled meats, and an array of desserts and cheeses. The consommé Olga is particularly good today, he recommends, and the chicken a la Maryland is a specialty of our chef. You opt for the consommé, followed by the chicken, while Maggie chooses cockle leaky soup and mutton chops from the grill. The steward nods approvingly at your selections and disappears to place your order. I met the most interesting gentleman this morning, Maggie shares once the steward is out of earshot. Thomas Andrews, the shipbuilder himself. He was inspecting something near the grand staircase, making notes in a little book. Very particular about every detail. What was he like? Surprisingly modest for a man who created all this. Maggie gestures expansively at your surroundings. He asked if I was enjoying the voyage and whether I'd noticed any improvements that could be made. Can you imagine? As if I would have the first idea about ship design. What did you tell him? That the ship is magnificent, but the electric camel is ridiculous. She laughs. He actually wrote it down in his notebook, said he'd been skeptical about including it, but was overruled by the White Star directors. Your consommé arrives, a clear, rich broth served in a delicate china cup. The first sip reveals layers of flavour that speak to hours of careful preparation. Not for the first time, you marvel at the logistics required to serve such refined cuisine in the middle of the ocean. Did you know, Maggie says between spoonfuls of her soup, they loaded 75,000 pounds of meat aboard and 40,000 eggs? The cold storage rooms take up half a deck below stairs. How do you know all this? I ask questions, she says with a wink. People love to talk about their work if you show genuine interest. The head steward gave me quite the tour yesterday while everyone else was at tea. Your main courses arrive, your chicken Maryland golden and crisp, served with a creamy white gravy, while Maggie's mutton chops are perfectly grilled with a side of mint sauce. The presentation is as elegant as the food is delicious, each plate a work of culinary art. As you eat, your conversation turns to fellow passengers. The Titanic's first-class list reads like a social register. Astors, Guggenheims, Wideners, Strausses, the cream of American and European society. Half the millionaires in America must be aboard, you observe, cutting into your chicken. Not quite half, Maggie says with a smile, but certainly enough wealth to fund a small country. John Jacob Astor alone is worth what? 100 million? I can't even imagine such a fortune. The Astors have been the subject of much discreet observation and gossip. After his scandalous divorce and remarriage to a woman 29 years his junior, their presence on the Titanic has provided endless material for shipboard conversation. "I saw Mrs. Astor in the library yesterday," you mention. "She's much younger than I expected, barely out of the schoolroom." "And expecting," Maggie adds in a hushed tone, "though it's not widely known yet. That's why they're returning to America, so the child can be born on American soil." Your eyebrows rise in surprise. "How do you know that?" "Her maid and my maid have become friendly. The servants always know everything first." The remainder of lunch passes pleasantly, concluding with a dessert of apple meringue and a selection of cheeses. By the time you finish, it's approaching 2 o'clock, time for your Turkish bath appointment. "Shall we?" Maggie suggests, dabbing her lips one final time before setting aside her napkin. You make your way back down to F deck, where the Turkish bath attendant greets you with a bow. "Mrs. Brown, madam, welcome. Your baths are prepared, if you'll follow me." The Turkish bath suite is a series of connected rooms, each maintained at a different temperature. You start in the temperate room, where you're given plush towels and directed to changing cubicles. The recommended progression is temperate room, cooling room, hot room, steam room, and then back to cooling room, the attendant explains. Some ladies prefer to skip the hottest rooms. It's entirely at your discretion. The massage and shampooing rooms are available for an additional charge. Changed into the provided linen wraps, you and Maggie enter the cooling room and stop in your tracks. "Good heavens," you breathe. The cooling room is nothing short of magical, decorated in an elaborate Moorish style with blue-green tiles covering the walls, intricately carved teak woodwork, and bronze lamps hanging from a deeply recessed crimson ceiling. The effect is of stepping not just off the ship, but into another world entirely, a sultan's palace from Arabian Nights. Around the perimeter are comfortable teak lounge chairs with plump cushions, small tables inlaid with mother-of-pearl, and a marble drinking fountain in one corner. Several other women already recline in various states of relaxation, some reading, others with eyes closed in apparent bliss. "I told you it was spectacular," Maggie whispers. "Worth the $1 admission just for this room alone." You settle into adjacent lounges, taking in the exotic atmosphere. The air is warm but not uncomfortable, fragrant with some unidentifiable spice. "I believe I'll stay right here while you brave the hotter rooms," Maggie decides, arranging her towels. "Heat and I have never been friends." You, however, are curious about the full experience. After a suitable rest in the cooling room, you proceed to the hot room, a simpler space with wooden benches and a noticeably higher temperature. The few women present speak in hushed tones, creating an atmosphere of reverent relaxation. Next comes the steam room, where the heat and humidity are almost overwhelming. You last only 5 minutes before retreating, your skin flushed and pores thoroughly opened. The return to the cooling room feels blissful after such intense heat. You sink onto your lounger, accepting a glass of cold water from an attendant. "You look properly steamed," Maggie observes with amusement. "Like a Christmas pudding. It's more intense than I expected," you admit. "But I feel lighter somehow." "It's all the toxins leaving your body," explains a woman nearby. "The Turks have known the health benefits for centuries, clears the mind and purifies the system." Whether it's ancient wisdom or modern marketing, you can't deny the pleasant lassitude spreading through your limbs. The unique combination of exercise and heat has left you feeling simultaneously energized and relaxed, a curious but not unpleasant sensation. You spend the next hour in the cooling room, occasionally sipping water and engaging in quiet conversation with Maggie and the other women. The topics are typical ladies' fare, fashion, society gossip, comparisons of various European spas, but the setting lends an exotic flavour to even the most mundane discussions. "We should probably think about dressing for tea," Maggie eventually suggests, checking the small clock on the wall. The orchestra plays in the lounge at 4, and they're quite good. Reluctantly, you leave the Arabian fantasy of the Turkish baths and return to the reality of the ship. Though reality aboard Titanic is itself a form of fantasy, you reflect. Every experience is curated, every comfort anticipated, every detail perfected to create a seamless world of luxury. After changing back into your day clothes, you and Maggie make your way to the reading and writing room on a deck, a space primarily designed for ladies to write letters, read, or engage in quiet conversation. The room is decorated in Georgian style, with comfortable armchairs, writing desks equipped with Titanic stationery, and large windows overlooking the boat deck and sea beyond. "I should write to my children before tea," Maggie says, settling at a desk. "Care to join me? You could tell your mother all about the scandalous Turkish baths." You smile at the suggestion, but take a seat at an adjacent desk. There is something special about correspondence written at sea. The letterhead alone a souvenir of the voyage. You select a sheet of white star-line stationery embossed with the company logo and RMS Titanic in elegant script. "Dearest Mother," you begin, your pen gliding across the heavy paper. "You won't believe where I am writing this from." For the next half hour, you compose a detailed account of your voyage thus far, the magnificence of the ship, the interesting people you've met, the unusual experiences like the electric camel and swimming bath. You deliberately omit specific names and gossipy details, knowing your mother's penchant for sharing correspondence with her friends. As you finish your letter, sealing it in an envelope to be posted upon arrival in New York, you notice the light outside the windows beginning to soften. The afternoon is advancing, the day's activities gradually transitioning toward evening. "Tea?" Maggie suggests, having completed her own letters. You nod, gathering your belongings. Another meal awaits, less formal than luncheon, but no less elegant. Afternoon tea aboard Titanic is a refined affair, with delicate sandwiches, scones, pastries, and of course, properly brewed tea served in fine bone china. As you follow Maggie toward the Palm Court where tea is served, you reflect on the curious nature of life at sea, this constant procession from one meal to the next, one activity to another, all while moving steadily across the vast Atlantic. There's a dreamlike quality to the experience, a suspension of normal time and constraints. The Palm Court awaits, with its potted palms, wicker furniture, and the gentle strains of the orchestra playing Tchaikovsky. Another chapter in your Titanic day is about to unfold, each hour bringing new pleasures in this floating world of Edwardian splendour. The Palm Court is already busy when you arrive, the gentle notes of a string quartet floating above the murmur of conversation. Afternoon tea aboard Titanic is no casual affair. It's a social ritual observed with all the proper ceremony. Ladies in afternoon dresses and gentlemen in lounge suits gather at small tables while stewards in white gloves move efficiently between them carrying silver trays. "Mrs. Brown, over here," calls a voice. It's Mrs. Bishop from breakfast, waving you and Maggie toward a table near the windows where she sits with two other women you haven't yet met. "We've saved seats," she explains as you approach. "Everyone wants a window table for tea." Introductions are made. The newcomers are Mrs. Carter and her daughter Lucille, both travelling to Philadelphia after a shopping expedition to Paris. Lucille, barely 20, is wide-eyed with excitement about everything aboard Titanic, from the Turkish baths, which her mother deemed inappropriate, to the wireless room where she sent messages to friends back home. $3 for 3 words, she says with a laugh. Father will have a fit when he sees the bill, but how could I not send a wireless from the Titanic? A steward appears at your table, laying out crisp white napkins with practised efficiency. Tea for 5, ladies. The Darjeeling is particularly good today. You settle on Darjeeling, and within minutes an elaborate tea service appears. A silver teapot, delicate cups and saucers in the white star line pattern, tiny silver tongs for sugar, and strainers for the loose tea. A 3-tiered serving stand follows, laden with finger sandwiches, cucumber, egg and cress, smoked salmon, freshly baked scones with clotted cream and strawberry jam, and an assortment of pastries that would make a Parisian patisserie proud. I'll pour, Mrs. Bishop offers, taking command of the teapot with the confidence of someone who has presided over countless afternoon teas. Milk? Sugar? The ritual of afternoon tea creates an immediate bond between women who were strangers moments before. Conversation flows as easily as the tea, covering the usual topics. The ship itself, magnificent. The crossing so far, remarkably smooth. Fellow passengers, have you seen the Astors? And plans for arrival in New York. We must be making good time, Mrs. Carter observes, glancing out the window at the passing ocean. Captain Smith has a reputation for speed, you know. My husband spoke with one of the officers this morning, Mrs. Bishop adds. Says we're doing over 22 knots consistently. Might arrive earlier than scheduled if this weather holds. I heard some of the gentlemen have organised a betting pool on each day's mileage, Maggie contributes. Quite substantial stakes, apparently. Young Lucille leans forward, her voice dropping to a scandalised whisper. Speaking of betting, I heard there are professional gamblers aboard, men who travel on these ships just to prey on wealthy passengers in the smoking room. Lucille, where do you hear such things? Her mother scolds. From Lady Duff Gordon's maid, she replies, unrepentant. She says they wear disguises and everything. Some even work with women who distract the victims. The conversation turns to shipboard gossip. The Ryersons had an argument in the lounge. The Wideners are planning a dinner party for Captain Smith the night before arrival. Benjamin Guggenheim travels with both a valet and a chauffeur, despite having no automobile aboard. As tea progresses, the orchestra shifts to playing selections from The Merry Widow, the popular operetta. Several passengers hum along, creating an atmosphere of genteel conviviality. I believe I'll take a turn around the deck before dressing for dinner, Maggie announces as the tea things are cleared away. Anyone care to join me? You agree readily, while the others decline. Mrs. Bishop and Mrs. Carter in favour of a rest before dinner. Lucille to write more expensive wireless messages to friends. Outside on the boat deck, the late afternoon sun casts a golden glow over everything. The air has warmed considerably since morning, making for pleasant walking conditions. Other passengers have had the same idea. The deck is busy with strollers enjoying the final hours of daylight. Tea was lovely, but I needed some air, Maggie confides as you walk. There's only so much gossip one can stomach in a sitting. You laugh in agreement. The constant close quarters of shipboard life breed gossip like nothing else. Every glance, conversation or social pairing analysed and discussed in exhaustive detail. As you complete your first circuit of the deck, you notice a group gathered around what appears to be some sort of game. Curious, you and Maggie pause to observe. Deck quoits, explains a gentleman standing nearby. Care to join? We're one player short. The game involves tossing rope rings onto a chalked target on the deck, simple in principle but surprisingly challenging with the gentle motion of the ship. You accept the invitation while Maggie begs off, preferring to watch. Your fellow players include the gentleman who invited you, Mr. Beasley, a science teacher returning from holiday, along with an American businessman named Sloper and an elderly colonel whose name you miss but who takes the game very seriously indeed. Left wrist straight, right arm in pendulum motion, the colonel instructs you, demonstrating the proper technique. Compensate 2 degrees for the ship's movement. You make a respectable showing for a beginner, landing several rings close to the centre target. Mr. Sloper proves exceptionally skilled, winning handily, while the colonel grumbles about the wind affecting his aim. Well played, Mr. Beasley tells you as the game concludes. We play daily at 3 if you'd care to join tomorrow. Ladies are most welcome. We had Mrs. Futrell yesterday and she nearly beat us all. Thanking him for the invitation, you rejoin Maggie, who has been chatting with a young couple at the rail. I've been recruited for shuffleboard tomorrow, she announces cheerfully. Mr. and Mrs. Astor organise a small tournament each afternoon. Your eyebrows rise in surprise. The Astors? The very same. They're trying to be more sociable, apparently. Tired of hiding in their suite, she lowers her voice. She's absolutely lovely, barely older than Lucille, poor thing, with everyone staring and whispering. The mention of the Astors reminds you of the social complexity aboard. How the microcosm of the ship reflects the larger society, with its judgments and hierarchies intact despite the democratic nature of the sea itself. You continue your walk, completing several circuits of the deck. The sun begins its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in spectacular shades of orange and pink. Many passengers pause their activities to watch the display, gathering at the rails to witness the sun seemingly sink into the vast Atlantic. Nothing like a sunset at sea, Maggie observes quietly, makes you feel small in the best possible way. You stand in companionable silence, watching nature's spectacle, the endless horizon, the play of light on water, the immensity of sky meeting ocean. It creates a sense of perspective that's easy to lose in the cloistered luxury of the ship's interior. As the light fades and a chill returns to the air, passengers begin drifting inside. Dinner preparations will soon begin in earnest. The most formal and elaborate meal of the day requires significant preparation, especially for ladies. I should start dressing, you tell Maggie reluctantly, still captivated by the last glimmers of sunset. Emily will be waiting. As will my Martha, she agrees. Tonight's the first proper formal dinner. Everyone will be in their finest. You part ways, agreeing to meet in the reception room before dinner. The transition from day to evening aboard Titanic is marked by a distinct shift in atmosphere, the relaxed camaraderie of afternoon activities giving way to the glittering formality of evening. In your stateroom, Emily has already laid out your evening attire. A gown of midnight blue silk with silver beading across the bodice, matching long gloves and your diamond and sapphire jewellery set. I've drawn your bath, madam, she informs you, with the lavender salts you prefer. The process of preparing for dinner is involved and methodical. First, the bath, a luxury of fresh water, as the steward explained proudly, not the salt water used in the swimming bath. Then the elaborate dressing ritual begins. Emily helps you into fresh undergarments, then the evening corset, tighter than the day version, designed to create the fashionable silhouette for formal wear. The difference in restriction is immediately noticeable. Your breathing more shallow, movements more constrained. "Too tight, madam?" Emily asks, reading your expression. "No, it's fine," you assure her, though in truth you wonder how you'll manage a 10-course dinner in such confinement. Fashion demands its sacrifices. Next comes the gown itself, a marvel of dressmaking with its intricate beading and perfectly draped skirt. Emily fastens dozens of tiny hooks and eyes up the back, adjusts the short train and helps you into your evening slippers. Then jewellery, the sapphire pendant that was your grandmother's, matching earrings and several diamond bracelets. Your hair is arranged in an elaborate updo with a small diamond hairpin adding just the right sparkle. The final touch, a spray of French perfume at throat and wrists. Emily steps back, surveying her handiwork with a critical eye. You look wonderful, madam. The blue brings out your eyes perfectly. A glance in the mirror confirms her assessment. The transformation from day to evening is complete. The practical walking suit and sensible boots replaced by silk, jewels and impractical satin slippers. You are now dressed for what is arguably the central social event of shipboard life, the first-class dinner. Will there be anything else, madam? No, thank you, Emily. I don't expect to be back until quite late. Don't wait up. Gathering your evening bag and wrap, you step into the corridor, immediately encountering other passengers similarly transformed, gentlemen in impeccable black evening dress with white waistcoats and ties, ladies in a rainbow of silk, satin and velvet, jewels catching the light with every movement. The grand staircase presents a magnificent sight as you descend, dozens of elegantly dressed passengers making their way down, the overhead dome bathing everyone in warm light, the ornate clock on the landing bearing silent witness to this nightly procession. You spot Maggie on the D-deck landing, resplendent in dark green satin that complements her auburn hair. She's deep in conversation with a distinguished-looking gentleman you don't recognise. "Ah, there you are," she exclaims, catching sight of you. "Come meet Mr. Ismay, chairman of the White Star Line himself." The tall, moustached gentleman turns to greet you, his manner surprisingly reserved for someone whose company created this floating palace. "A pleasure, madam. Are you enjoying your voyage thus far?" "Very much, Mr. Ismay. The ship is extraordinary in every way." He nods, accepting the compliment as his due. "We aimed to create not merely transportation, but an experience. Comfort rather than speed was our priority, though we're making excellent time nonetheless." Your conversation is interrupted by the clear, brassy notes of a bugle. Unlike the gongs or bells used on other ships, White Star Line announces dinner with a bugler playing "The Roast Beef of Old England," a touch of pageantry that never fails to amuse passengers. "Dinner is served," Maggie says with a smile. "Shall we?" The reception room outside the dining saloon is already filled with passengers in their evening finery. The space serves as a gathering point before meals, allowing for pre-dinner conversation and the formation of dining groups. The ship's orchestra plays from a raised platform in one corner, adding a soundtrack of light classical pieces to the bubbling conversation. Women in elaborate gowns form islands of colour among the black and white uniformity of men's evening dress. Jewels sparkle everywhere, at throats, on wrists, in carefully arranged hair. The combined value of diamonds in the room likely rivals the ship itself. You notice the Astors making a carefully timed entrance. John Jacob in immaculate evening dress, young Madeline on his arm in a gown of pale pink with a triple strand of pearls. Despite their attempt at casual entrance, a subtle hush follows them. Heads turning, whispers exchanged. "Poor things," Maggie murmurs, "like animals in a zoo." The maitre d' approaches, bowing slightly. "Your table is ready, Mrs. Brown. For 4 this evening?" "Yes, thank you. We're joining the bishops." He leads you through the wide entrance into the dining saloon proper, an enormous room spanning the full width of the ship, set with dozens of tables from intimate arrangements for 2 to larger groupings for parties of up to 12. The space gleams with white and gold, illuminated by crystal chandeliers and wall sconces. Heavy linen tablecloths provide a pristine backdrop for the elaborate place settings. Multiple forks, spoons and knives arranged with geometric precision, crystal glasses for water, white wine, red wine and champagne, and the distinctive blue and gold rimmed White Star Line china. At each place sits a personalised menu card listing the evening's offerings in both French and English. Tonight's dinner promises to be particularly lavish. 11 courses including oysters, consommé, salmon, filet mignon, lamb, roast duckling and multiple desserts. As you take your seat, a wine steward appears silently at your elbow. "Champagne to begin, madam. We're serving Moet et Chandon, 1900 vintage." You nod your assent, and he pours a perfect measure into your glass before moving on to the next guest. Another steward places a crisp napkin across your lap with practiced efficiency. The bishops arrive, Mr. Bishop resplendent in white tie, his wife wearing cream satin with an impressive emerald necklace. Greetings are exchanged, compliments on attire offered and graciously accepted, and the elaborate social ballet of dinner begins. As the first course is served, oysters on crushed ice with lemon and mignonette sauce, you can't help but marvel at the spectacle around you. This nightly gathering of wealth and privilege, this painstaking recreation of land-based luxury in the middle of the Atlantic, represents the pinnacle of Edwardian extravagance. The oysters are impeccably fresh, the champagne perfectly chilled. Beyond your table, the vast room hums with conversation and laughter, silverware clinking against fine china, crystal glasses catching the light. At the captain's table in the centre of the room, Captain Smith hosts several prominent passengers, including the Wideners and Thayers. He looks every inch the distinguished commander in his dress uniform with gold braid, white beard, perfectly trimmed. "I heard he's retiring after this voyage," Mrs. Bishop shares in a low voice. 38 years with White Star. This is to be his final command. "What a way to conclude a career," Maggie remarks, "with the finest ship ever built." As the oyster plates are cleared and the consommé is served, you settle into the rhythm of first-class dining, the measured procession of courses, each with its accompanying wine, the ebb and flow of conversation, the constant, unobtrusive attention of the stewards. The evening stretches before you, promising hours of culinary indulgence and social engagement. This is Titanic at her most magnificent, a floating palace where the elite of 2 continents gather to dine in unparalleled splendour, all while steaming steadily westward across the vast Atlantic. The dinner unfolds like a carefully orchestrated performance, each course arriving and departing with balletic precision. After the consommé comes the salmon with mousseline sauce and cucumber, then a palate-cleansing punch romaine, a sophisticated lemon sorbet with champagne, followed by the filet mignon. "The logistics are mind-boggling," Mr. Bishop remarks as a steward places his perfectly cooked filet before him. "They say there are 60 chefs working below decks to prepare all this." "And remember," Maggie adds, "they're doing this while cooking entirely different meals for second and third class. Thousands of meals, 3 times daily, plus tea service, plus room service. You savour a bite of the tender beef, wondering about the massive kitchens, somewhere far below, where all this culinary magic happens." The contrast between the serene dining experience up here and what must be controlled chaos down there is remarkable. "Did you hear the latest about the Allisons?" Mrs. Bishop asks, leaning in slightly. "They brought their own baby nurse aboard, separate from the governess for their daughter. 2 nursemaids for 2 children." Maggie raises an eyebrow. "That's excessive even by first-class standards." The conversation meanders pleasantly, touching on fellow passengers, plans for New York, and events back home. You contribute occasionally, but find yourself equally absorbed in people-watching, observing the social tapestry of first class at its most formal and elaborate. At a nearby table, Benjamin Guggenheim dines with his valet and a young woman who is decidedly not Mrs. Guggenheim. The Frenchwoman, introduced as his secretary, wears an evening gown that would not be out of place in Paris's most exclusive boutiques. "His poor wife," Mrs. Bishop whispers, following your gaze, "at home with their daughters while he parades his mistress aboard ship. At least he's discreet enough to dine away from the captain's table," Maggie observes dryly. The captain's table remains the social centre of the room, with Smith playing the genial host to a rotating selection of the ship's most prominent passengers. Tonight he entertains the Wideners, Thayers and Carters, Philadelphia society families travelling together after a European tour. As the roast duckling with applesauce is served, the 6th course by your count, a steward discreetly approaches your table. "Pardon the interruption, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Guggenheim sends his compliments and asks if you would care to join his party for coffee in the Café Parisien after dinner." Mr. Bishop looks momentarily startled by the invitation, while his wife's expression betrays both surprise and calculation, weighing the social advantage of Guggenheim's circle against the potential impropriety of his female companion. "How lovely," she finally responds. "Please tell Mr. Guggenheim we would be delighted." As the steward departs, she turns to the table with barely contained excitement. The Café Parisien is supposedly the most exclusive spot aboard. They say it's nearly impossible to secure a table, unless you're in with the right set. "I wonder why us?" you muse aloud. "We've barely met Mr. Guggenheim." I may have mentioned to his valet that Mrs. Brown here knows the Astors, Mr. Bishop admits with a slight smile. "Word travels quickly in these circles." Maggie laughs. "So I'm your ticket to higher society? How ironic. Back in Denver, half the drawing rooms are closed to me." The dinner continues its stately progression through sirloin of beef, chateau potatoes, and then a cold asparagus dish with vinaigrette. Each course is accompanied by a different wine, selected and poured with expert commentary by the wine steward. The Bordeaux is from the Rothschild vineyards, he explains as he serves a deep ruby liquid alongside the beef. A particularly good year. By the time dessert arrives, Waldorf pudding, peaches in chartreuse jelly, and chocolate eclairs, conversation throughout the dining saloon has grown more animated. The formality of early dinner has relaxed somewhat, warmed by good food and liberal wine. A string quintet plays discreetly from a corner, providing a refined soundtrack to the meal. The selections are well chosen, classical pieces, familiar enough to be recognisable, but not so dramatic as to interfere with conversation. "They play wonderfully," you comment during a pause between pieces. "They should. They're from the Royal Opera House in London," Mr. Bishop informs you. "White Star hires only the best musicians for first class." Coffee is served as the final course, along with petits fours and chocolates. A silver box of cigarettes is offered to the ladies, a relatively new social development that still raises eyebrows in some circles. Mrs. Bishop declines with a small sniff of disapproval, while Maggie accepts one with obvious pleasure. "One of the advantages of being a widow," she remarks as a steward provides a light. "No husband to disapprove of my small vices." Throughout the dining saloon, a subtle shift is occurring. Following tradition, ladies begin to rise, ready to withdraw to the lounge while the gentlemen remain for cigars, port, and traditionally male conversation. "Shall we?" Mrs. Bishop suggests, placing her napkin beside her plate. You and Maggie follow her lead, bidding temporary farewell to Mr. Bishop, who promises to join you later in the Café Parisien after just one cigar with the other gentlemen. Or one cigar invariably becomes 3, plus port, plus whatever card games materialise, Maggie predicts as you make your way out of the dining saloon. We won't see them for at least an hour. The first-class lounge awaits, a magnificent room decorated in French Louis XV style, with curved walls, ornate white and gold panelling, plush carpeting, and grouped seating arrangements that facilitate conversation. Crystal chandeliers illuminate the space with warm, flattering light, while the inlaid parquet floor gleams with polish. Many of the women have already arrived, forming small conversational clusters. Mrs. Astor holds court near the fireplace, surrounded by a half-dozen attentive listeners, while Mrs. Widener and Mrs. Thayer occupy a corner settee, heads together in what appears to be serious discussion. Politics, Maggie guesses, following your gaze to the latter pair. Mrs. Widener is a fierce suffragist, though she keeps it quiet in certain circles. Mrs. Thayer is more traditional. They've been having the same argument for 20 years, from what I hear. You find seats near a window where the night presses dark against the glass. The reflection of the lounge creates the illusion that the room extends infinitely into the blackness, a bubble of light and warmth surrounded by the vast Atlantic night. A steward approaches with a tray of cordials, small glasses of crème de menthe, Benedictine, and cherry brandy. The sweet liqueurs are traditionally offered to ladies after dinner, another ritual in the elaborate social choreography of first class. Benedictine for me, Maggie decides, helps with digestion after these marathon meals. You select the crème de menthe, its refreshing mint flavour a pleasant conclusion to the rich dinner. The conversation turns to tomorrow's activities, a church service in the morning, it being Sunday. Perhaps a promenade on deck if weather permits, then the usual progression of meals and entertainments that structure shipboard life. I've heard whispers of a dance tomorrow evening, Mrs. Bishop shares. In the reception room, captains invited the orchestra to play and they're clearing space for a proper floor. How delightful, you respond, though privately wondering how dancing will work in your evening corset and gown. Some sacrifices for social pleasure seem excessive. The lounge gradually fills with more ladies, the volume of conversation rising accordingly. Topics range from fashion to literature to gentle gossip about absent fellow passengers. It's pleasant enough, but after half an hour of increasingly superficial chatter, you find yourself curious about what's happening in the smoking room. I wonder if we might peek in, you suggest quietly to Maggie, just to observe. Her eyes light up with mischievous agreement. Mrs. Bishop would be scandalised, but I'm game if you are. Let's say we're going to the library and make a detour. You make your excuses to Mrs. Bishop, who is deep in conversation about New York dressmakers with Mrs. Carter, and slip out of the lounge. The corridor is quiet, most passengers either in the lounge, the smoking room, or already retired for the evening. This way, Maggie directs, leading you up a deck to where the first-class smoking room occupies a prime position on the starboard side of a deck. Unlike the lounge, the smoking room is explicitly male territory, one of the last bastions of gender separation in Edwardian social life. No rule explicitly forbids women from entering, but tradition makes their presence unusual and somewhat provocative. You pause outside the mahogany doors, hearing the murmur of male voices and occasional laughter from within. Through small windows in the doors, you can glimpse the scene, a room hazed with cigar smoke, dark with mahogany panelling, green leather chairs occupied by men in evening dress, brandy snifters and whiskey tumblers in hand. "Shall we brave it?" Maggie whispers, her expression both hesitant and intrigued. Before you can decide, the doors swing open as a steward exits. He stops short at the sight of you both, momentarily surprised by female presence in this traditionally male domain. "May I help you, ladies?" he asks, recovering his professional composure. "We were hoping to find Mr. Bishop," Mrs. Bishop explains smoothly. "A message from his wife." The steward hesitates only briefly before nodding. "Of course, madam. If you'll wait here, I'll fetch him for you." "Oh, there's no need to disturb him," Maggie interjects. "We can step in for just a moment." Without waiting for a response, she pushes gently past the steward, leaving him no choice but to step aside. You follow, entering the inner sanctum of male shipboard society. The smoking room is like stepping into a London gentleman's club, all dark wood, leather and masculine comfort. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and the rich scent of brandy. Along one wall runs a marble fireplace with a coal fire burning behind a protective screen, the only actual fire permitted aboard ship. Your entrance causes a momentary lull in conversation, several heads turning in surprise. Mr. Bishop, seated at a card table with 3 other men, looks up with an expression of confused alarm. "Ladies, is everything all right?" he asks, half rising. "Perfectly fine," Maggie assures him with a disarming smile. "We were simply curious about what keeps you gentlemen so enthralled after dinner. Don't mind us." The momentary tension breaks as several men chuckle, some rising politely from their seats. Most of the older generation look mildly scandalized, but the younger men seem amused and even pleased by your unexpected appearance. "Mrs. Brown, come join us," calls Benjamin Guggenheim from a corner where he's engaged in what appears to be an intense card game. "We could use a fresh perspective on these hands." Maggie, never one to refuse a direct invitation, makes her way toward his table. You follow, aware of the eyes tracking your progress across the room, some disapproving, others merely curious. Guggenheim's table is the centre of the most serious card playing in the room. Stacks of chips indicate significant sums at stake, far more than the friendly penny ante games at other tables. "Poker?" Maggie inquires, observing the cards. 5-card stud, Guggenheim confirms. "Care to try your hand? I'll stake you." Before Maggie can respond, a new commotion draws attention to the centre of the room. A man with a gavel has mounted a small platform, calling for attention. "Gentlemen and ladies," he adds with a nod toward you and Maggie, "the daily pool is about to commence." This, you realise, is the betting on the ship's daily run that you've heard mentioned, a tradition on transatlantic crossings where passengers wager on the exact distance travelled in the previous 24 hours. Today's run, officially recorded at noon, was 546 nautical miles, the auctioneer announces. Tomorrow's pool is now open for bidding. 20 numbers available, ranging from 548 to 567 miles. The auction proceeds rapidly, with numbers being called out and bids rising. The most popular numbers, those in the middle range of 555 to 560, command the highest prices, reaching as high as £20. "Remarkable how seriously they take it," observes a voice at your elbow. You turn to find Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer himself, watching the proceedings with a bemused expression. "Mr. Andrews," you acknowledge with a smile, "do you not participate?" "I have an unfair advantage," he replies with a small smile. "I know exactly what the engines are capable of, and I check the log regularly. It would hardly be sporting." The auction continues, growing more heated as the last few numbers remain. You notice one man in particular, elegantly dressed but somehow not quite fitting in with the established first-class set, bidding aggressively on number 562. "Who is that gentleman?" you ask Andrews quietly. His expression turns guarded. "Not someone I'd recommend making an acquaintance with. There are, unfortunately, professional gamblers who make their living on these crossings. They cultivate relationships with crew members for inside information on weather and engine performance. That particular individual was asked to disembark from the Olympic last year after some rather questionable card play." You watch with new understanding as the man secures his number for £15, a substantial sum that he pays without hesitation from a thick wallet. "They often work in teams," Andrews continues, his voice low. "Some focus on the daily pool, others on card games. They typically let their marks win for several days, establishing false confidence before the final evening out from New York when the stakes rise dramatically. And the White Star Line permits this? There's little we can do beyond warning passengers. Gambling isn't officially sanctioned aboard ship anyway, merely tolerated. We can hardly police private card games between consenting adults." He sighs. "My advice? If Mr. Guggenheim invites you to play poker on our final evening, develop a sudden headache." With the auction concluded, attention returns to individual card tables and conversation groups. Guggenheim is still attempting to persuade Maggie to join his game when Mr. Bishop approaches, looking mildly uncomfortable. "Ladies, while your company is always delightful, perhaps we might proceed to the Café Parisien as planned. Mrs. Bishop will be wondering about our whereabouts." You agree readily, having satisfied your curiosity about the smoking room's mysteries. As you turn to leave, you notice several tables where serious gambling is clearly in progress. The stacks of chips, the intent expressions, the careful handling of cards, all indicating games where significant sums are at stake. In one corner, an older gentleman whose name you don't know, but whose diamond stickpin suggests considerable wealth, is playing against two younger men who exchange occasional glances. The trap being set is almost visible to your now informed eye. "Come along, Maggie," you say, taking her arm. "I believe we've intruded on the gentleman's domain long enough." She allows herself to be led away, though not without a backward glance at Guggenheim's table. "Pity," she whispers. "I'm actually quite good at poker. Denver's full of mining men who underestimate a woman's ability to calculate odds." You exit the smoke-filled room into the relative freshness of the corridor, Mr. Bishop following with obvious relief. "That was rather unconventional," he remarks mildly as you make your way toward the Café Parisien. "Life's too short for convention at every turn," Maggie replies with a laugh. "Besides, I learned more in 5 minutes there than in an hour of ladies' chatter in the lounge. Did you notice the man bidding on number 562? Classic confidence man if I ever saw one." Mr. Bishop looks surprised at her astuteness. "You're remarkably observant, Mrs. Brown." "I wasn't always wealthy, Mr. Bishop. I learned to spot predators early in life." The conversation pauses as you arrive at the Café Parisien, a charming space designed to evoke a Parisian sidewalk café with wicker furniture, trellises and large windows overlooking the promenade deck and, beyond it, the night-dark Atlantic. The maitre d' greets you with a bow. "Mr. Guggenheim's party. This way, please." As you follow him to a prime table near the windows, you reflect on the complex social ecosystem aboard Titanic, the rituals and traditions, the subtle hierarchies, the undercurrents of manipulation and aspiration just beneath the glittering surface. For all its luxury and innovation, the ship remains a microcosm of the society that created it, magnificent, stratified, and sailing confidently into a future future that none of its passengers can possibly foresee. The Café Parisien glows with warm light, creating the perfect illusion of a Parisian sidewalk cafe, albeit one that happens to be floating in the middle of the Atlantic. Wicker chairs, potted plants and trellises adorned with artificial ivy complete the continental atmosphere. Through the large windows you can see your own reflection floating ghost-like against the black void of the ocean night. Guggenheim's party occupies the best table in the room, centrally located yet private enough for conversation. Besides Guggenheim himself, the group includes his French secretary, Madame Aubert, his valet Victor Gilliot, the Widener's son Harry and his wife, and a few others whose names escape you. "Ah, there you are!" Guggenheim rises to greet you, expansively gesturing to empty chairs. "We were beginning to think you'd abandoned us for more interesting company." "We took a slight detour," Maggie explains, with a meaningful glance that makes Guggenheim chuckle. "The smoking room, I presume. Bold move, ladies. Did you scandalize the old guard?" "Thoroughly," you admit, taking a seat beside Madame Aubert, who offers you a warm smile despite her limited English. Stewards immediately appear with coffee and a selection of liqueurs. The cafe operates differently than the dining saloon, more relaxed with an a la carte menu and service that feels less regimented. A small trio plays light music in the corner, not the classical selections from dinner, but popular tunes and ragtime pieces that add to the contemporary atmosphere. "This is my favourite spot on the ship," Harry Widener confides as he sips a brandy. "Reminds me of that little place off the Champs-Élysées where we stopped last summer, doesn't it, Eleanor?" His wife nods in agreement, though considerably less smoky, thank goodness, and with far better coffee. Harry Widener, you recall, is an avid book collector in his early 30s, heir to the Widener department store fortune, and rumoured to have spent over $40,000 on rare volumes during this European trip. "Did you find that Bacon first edition you were hunting?" Mr. Bishop asks him. Harry's face lights up at the question. "I did indeed. Found it in a tiny shop in London where the proprietor had no idea what he had. 15 guineas for a book worth 20 times that. My husband would build a separate house just for his books if his mother would allow it," Eleanor says with fond exasperation. "As it is, our library is already overflowing." The conversation flows easily in this less formal setting. You notice that social barriers seem slightly lowered here. Guggenheim's valet, while not exactly participating as an equal, is nonetheless included in the circle rather than standing at attention behind his employer's chair. Madame Aubert leans towards you, her French accent melodic. "You are enjoying the voyage, yes? The ship, she is magnificent." "Very much so," you reply, "though I find myself getting lost occasionally. The layout is rather confusing." She laughs. "Oui. Yesterday I walked for 10 minutes in circles. Mr. Andrews, the ship designer, he found me looking very confused. He was most kind, drew me a little map." She mimes drawing on paper. "Now I keep it in my purse." As coffee and liqueurs are consumed, the gathering grows increasingly animated. Guggenheim, clearly enjoying his role as host, calls for champagne. To new friendships forged at sea, he proposes, as glasses are distributed. You sip the excellent champagne, observing the dynamics around you. Despite his questionable personal choices, travelling openly with his mistress while his wife remains at home, Guggenheim is undeniably charming. His generosity seems genuine rather than showy, and he has the gift of making everyone feel included. "You're from Colorado, Mrs. Brown?" he asks Maggie. "Mining interests, I believe?" "My husband struck gold at Little Johnny Mine," she confirms, "though I've been managing our affairs since we separated." If Guggenheim is scandalised by the mention of separation, he doesn't show it. "Remarkable. I've always found the West fascinating. So much opportunity, So little of the social constraint we labour under back east. Oh, Denver has its constraints, Maggie replies with a wry smile. They're just different ones. Money talks, but the right ancestors talk louder. Isn't that always the way? Eleanor Widener interjects. In Philadelphia, our family could buy and sell half the city, but there are still drawing rooms where we're not welcome. Because of the department stores, her husband adds. Retail trade, perfectly acceptable to inherit land, wealth or banking fortunes, but heaven forbid one should actually sell things for profit. The conversation turns to the peculiarities of social hierarchies in various cities, New York versus Philadelphia versus Boston, with occasional European comparisons. You contribute observations about your own experiences, finding this topic far more engaging than the superficial chatter in the ladies' lounge. "And what about you, Mr. Giglio?" you ask Guggenheim's valet during a lull. You must have observed interesting social customs in your travels with Mr. Guggenheim. The young Italian looks momentarily startled at being directly addressed, but recovers quickly. "Indeed, madam, though I find American society far more fluid than European. In Italy, your station at birth largely determines your entire life." "Victor is being modest," Guggenheim interjects. "He speaks 5 languages and knows more about art and literature than most university professors. I'm constantly having to prevent museums from trying to hire him away from me." Giglio's expression shows both embarrassment and pride at his employer's praise. You're struck by the curious relationship between the two men, not merely master and servant, but something approaching friendship, albeit within carefully maintained boundaries. The champagne bottle empties and is promptly replaced. The cafe has gradually filled with other passengers seeking after-dinner refreshment, creating a pleasant background hum of conversation. Through the windows, you occasionally glimpse couples strolling on the promenade deck, silhouetted against the night. "I hear there's talk of a dance tomorrow evening," Mrs. Widener mentions, after dinner in the reception room. "Splendid idea," Guggenheim approves, "though I warn you all, Madame Aubert is an exceptional dancer who will put the rest of us to shame." "Nonsense," the Frenchwoman protests, though her pleased expression suggests the compliment has some basis in truth. "Will the ship's orchestra play, do you think?" you ask. "They're quite good." "I believe so," Mr. Bishop confirms, though I heard one of the musicians complaining that their sheet music for the latest ragtime pieces hasn't arrived. Apparently it was supposed to be aboard, but got misplaced in Southampton. "Perhaps they could play some of Scott Joplin's older pieces," Maggie suggests. "I wouldn't mind hearing The Entertainer again." As if on cue, the cafe's small trio begins playing a recognizable ragtime melody. Several heads turn in appreciation, and a few couples in the corner begin to sway slightly in their seats. "If they're playing dance music, we should be dancing," Guggenheim declares, rising suddenly. "Madame Aubert, would you do me the honor?" He leads his companion to a small open space near the musicians where they begin to dance despite the limited room. Their movements are elegant and practiced, suggesting long familiarity with each other's rhythms. Other couples follow suit, creating an impromptu dance floor in the cafe. Harry Widener leads his wife to join them, while Mr. Bishop looks momentarily torn before offering his hand to Maggie, who accepts with an amused smile. "You don't mind?" he asks you, suddenly concerned about leaving you alone at the table. "Not at all," you assure him. "I'm happy to watch." Left temporarily alone, you sip your champagne and observe the scene with contentment. There's something magical about this unexpected moment of spontaneous joy. Elegant couples dancing in a faux Parisian cafe in the middle of the Atlantic, the ship's gentle movement adding a subtle counterpoint to their steps. The dancing continues for several songs, eventually drawing in nearly everyone from Guggenheim's party. You're about to accept an invitation from a gentleman at a neighbouring table when Giglio, who has also remained seated, leans toward you. "May I point something out without seeming impertinent?" he asks quietly. Intrigued, you nod. "The gentleman who just invited you to dance, I recognised him from a previous crossing on the Mauretania. He's known to target wealthy women travelling alone, particularly those wearing expensive jewellery." You glance discreetly at the man, now hovering nearby with barely concealed impatience. His attire is impeccable, his manner refined, but something in his eyes, a calculating quality you hadn't noticed before, suddenly seems apparent. "I see," you murmur. "Thank you for the warning." "My apologies if I've overstepped," Giglio says, withdrawing slightly. "Not at all. I appreciate your concern." When the gentleman approaches again, you decline his invitation with a polite excuse about a developing headache. His smile remains fixed, but his eyes flash with momentary annoyance before he moves on to another prospective partner. The dancing gradually winds down as the hour grows later. Couples return to their tables, slightly flushed and laughing. Maggie drops into her chair beside you, fanning herself with a menu. "Mr. Bishop is surprisingly light on his feet for such a serious man," she confides. "Who knew bankers could dance?" The gathering begins to disperse as it approaches midnight. The day has been long and full, and even the most energetic passengers are showing signs of fatigue. Guggenheim, however, seems determined to continue the festivities. "The night is young," he protests as the Wideners make their excuses. "Surely we could move to the smoking room for a nightcap." "Some of us plan to attend the church service tomorrow morning," Eleanor Widener replies firmly, "which requires being awake before noon." One by one, guests depart until only your original party remains. You, Maggie, and the Bishops. Even Guggenheim finally concedes to the late hour, escorting Madame Aubert toward their respective staterooms, with Giglio following discreetly behind. "Shall we retire as well?" Mrs. Bishop suggests, stifling a yawn behind her gloved hand. "I think I might take a brief turn around the deck first," you decide, suddenly reluctant to end the evening, "just to clear my head before bed." "I'll join you," Maggie offers. "The air will do us good after all that champagne." You bid good night to the Bishops, promising to meet for breakfast, and make your way out to the promenade deck. The night air is bracingly cold after the warmth of the cafe, a shock that clears away the slight champagne fog in your head. The deck is nearly deserted at this hour. A few hardy souls stand at the rails, smoking late-night cigarettes or simply gazing at the extraordinary canopy of stars visible far from the pollution of cities. The only sound is the rush of water against the hull and the distant, ever-present hum of the engines. You and Maggie find a relatively sheltered spot near a lifeboat where the wind is less biting. Looking up, you're struck speechless by the celestial display. Thousands of stars scattered across the velvet blackness, the Milky Way a brilliant smear of light overhead. "It makes you feel small, doesn't it?" Maggie says softly. "All these people aboard with their wealth and titles and petty concerns, and then there's this." She gestures upward. "Puts things in perspective." "I was just thinking the same thing," you admit. "We're so insulated in there, with the electric lights and orchestras and 10-course dinners. Out here you remember we're just a tiny ship in an enormous ocean, under an even more enormous sky," Maggie adds. You stand in companionable silence for several minutes, each lost in private contemplation. The ship's steady progress creates a perpetual breeze, carrying the clean scent of open ocean. Despite the chill, there's something profoundly peaceful about this moment, a rare stillness in the midst of the voyage's constant social whirl. "I think I'll stay out a bit longer," Maggie eventually says. "Don't feel obliged to wait with me. Are you sure it's getting quite cold?" She smiles. "I'm tougher than I look. Besides, we don't get stars like this in Denver. Too much smoke from the smelters. I want to savour it while I can." You squeeze her hand in understanding before taking your leave. The walk back to your stateroom is a solitary journey through the ship's quieting spaces. Most passengers have retired, leaving the corridors and public rooms eerily empty compared to their daytime bustle. The grand staircase, normally teeming with ascending and descending figures, stands in majestic silence. Your footsteps echo slightly on the marble floor as you descend toward B deck, the ornate clock on the landing showing nearly 1 a.m. In your stateroom, Emily has long since gone to bed, leaving a small lamp burning and your nightclothes laid out. The cabin is pleasantly warm thanks to the electric heater, creating a cocoon of comfort against the Atlantic night. The process of undressing without assistance is challenging, evening gowns of the era not being designed for independent removal, but you manage through long practice of travelling without a lady's maid. Hooks are unfastened, pins removed from your hair, jewels carefully stored away. Freed from the constraints of corset and formal attire, you perform your nighttime ablutions at the marble-topped washstand. The face in the mirror looks different from the one that greeted the morning, slightly flushed from champagne and fresh air, eyes bright with the day's experiences, hair tumbling loose around your shoulders. You slip between the crisp linen sheets with a sigh of pure contentment. The subtle vibration of the engines creates a soothing background hum, while the gentle rocking of the ship provides a cradle-like motion that's deeply relaxing. As you drift towards sleep, images from the day float through your mind. The electric camel in the gymnasium, the Turkish bath's exotic tiles, Guggenheim dancing with Madame Obar, stars scattered across the Atlantic night, all part of this extraordinary floating world that carries you steadily westward toward New York. Tomorrow will bring Sunday services in the morning, perhaps more deck games if weather permits, another progression of elaborate meals, and the promised dance in the evening. Each day aboard Titanic offers new experiences, new acquaintances, new pleasures. But for now, there is only the comfortable embrace of your bed, the rhythmic pulse of the ship's engines, and the knowledge that while you sleep, Titanic continues her stately progress across the vast, dark Atlantic. Your last conscious thought before sleep claims you is how fortunate you are to be experiencing the maiden voyage of this magnificent vessel, surely the most luxurious and modern ship ever to sail the seas. You dream of endless corridors and rooms that shift and change as you move through them, the surreal geography of shipboard life translating into dreamscape. In your dream, you're searching for something important, moving from the Turkish bath to the gymnasium to the grand staircase, always just missing whatever it is you seek. A gentle knock at your door pulls you from sleep. For a moment, you're disoriented, the subtle movement beneath you unfamiliar until memory returns. You're aboard the Titanic in your stateroom on B deck. "Good morning, madam," Emily says quietly, entering with your morning tea. "I've brought extra hot water today, it's quite cold out." You sit up, accepting the steaming cup gratefully. Outside your porthole, the sky is the deep blue of early morning, not yet touched by sunrise. The ship seems particularly quiet. Even the ever-present engine vibration feels muted somehow. "What time is it?" you ask, sipping the perfectly brewed tea. "Just after 5, madam. You asked to be wakened early if you recall." You had indeed made the request, though in your sleep-fogged state you'd momentarily forgotten. Last evening, as you drifted off to sleep, an idea had formed. To experience a sunrise at sea, something you'd heard was spectacular but had never witnessed on previous Atlantic crossings. Thank you, Emily. The blue walking suit today, I think, and my heaviest coat. Very good, madam. I've already laid them out, and I've included your wool scarf and gloves. The steward says it's below freezing on deck. You dress quickly, eager to be outside before the first light breaks. The ship is eerily silent as you make your way through the corridors and up the grand staircase. At this hour, even the most diligent stewards are scarce, and fellow passengers are still wrapped in dreams behind closed doors. Pushing open the heavy door to the boat deck, you're met with a blast of cold that takes your breath away. The air is knife-sharp with cold, carrying the pure scent of open ocean. You pull your scarf tighter around your neck and button your coat to the chin before stepping fully outside. The deck is completely deserted, save for a solitary officer on watch, pacing slowly near the bridge. He nods politely as you emerge, but doesn't approach, respectful of your evident desire for solitude. You find a spot at the port rail, facing east, where the faintest lightening of the sky suggests the coming dawn. The horizon is still indistinguishable, sea and sky merging in a uniform darkness. Above, a few stubborn stars remain visible, though most have already faded into the brightening sky. The cold is intense but clarifying, chasing away the last cobwebs of sleep. Your breath forms small clouds that are immediately whipped away by the wind. Beneath your gloved hands, the rail is ice cold even through the wool. Time passes in peaceful solitude as you watch the eastern sky slowly transform. First comes a barely perceptible lightening along the horizon, then a faint band of palest gold. The transition is so gradual that it's impossible to pinpoint when night truly becomes dawn. But eventually, the dark water begins to differentiate itself from the sky, the horizon appearing as a sharp line between the two. As light grows stronger, the sea reveals itself in all its morning glory, not the sparkling blue of afternoon, but a deep, steely grey with occasional flashes of silver where waves catch the strengthening light. The vastness of it strikes you anew, this endless expanse of water stretching to every horizon crossed by your single vessel. The sun itself, when it finally appears, emerges with surprising swiftness once its upper edge breaches the horizon. A sliver of blazing gold becomes a semicircle, then a full disk that seems to leap free of the sea, too brilliant to look at directly. Its light catches the higher clouds, painting them in shades of pink and amber that reflect delicately on the water below. Magnificent, isn't it? Says a quiet voice beside you. You turn, startled from your reverie, to find Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, standing nearby, hands clasped behind his back as he gazes at the sunrise. "I didn't hear you approach," you admit. "Yes, it's breathtaking. I try to catch at least one sunrise during every crossing," he says. "It reminds me how small we really are, despite all our grand engineering. That sun has risen over empty ocean at this exact spot for millennia. We're just passing through." There's something poetic in his observation that seems at odds with his reputation as a practical shipbuilder. You study his profile, noting the mixture of pride and humility in his expression as he looks out over the ship, his creation silhouetted against the dawn sky. "Do you ever get used to it?" you ask. "The knowledge that you designed something so immense?" He considers the question thoughtfully. "No, I don't believe I do. Every time I step aboard, there's a moment of disbelief. All those drawings and calculations, all those meetings and arguments over details, and here she is carrying over 2,000 souls across the Atlantic." He gestures toward the ship stretching before and behind you. "There are over 3 million rivets holding her together. Did you know that? 3 million. And I worry about every one of them." "Surely you don't need to worry. Everything seems perfect." That's kind of you to say. His smile is gentle, but no ship is perfect. This one's closer than most, but I keep a notebook of things I want to improve for her sister ship, the Britannic. Already have 15 pages of notes. Such as? Small things, mostly. The private promenade decks on B deck have proven very popular. I'd include more of those. Some of the first-class cabins are too small. The Turkish bath cooling room has no natural light. I'd change that. And of course, more lifeboats. More, you ask, glancing at the row of boats secured along the deck. There seem to be quite a few already. Not enough, he says quietly. Not nearly enough, but I was overruled on that point. Said they'd make the boat deck look cluttered. A shadow crosses his face. Form over function, the eternal battle in design. He seems about to say more when a steward approaches, looking apologetic for interrupting. Pardon me, Mr. Andrews. You're wanted in the engine room. Chief engineer says there's something you should see with the starboard propeller shaft. Andrews sighs, then nods. Duty calls. Enjoy the rest of the sunrise, madam, and the voyage. He departs with the steward, leaving you alone once more with the strengthening dawn. The sky is fully light now, though the sun remains low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the deck. The sea has transformed from grey to a deep, translucent blue that seems to hold the morning light within its depths. More of the crew have appeared, going about their morning duties, checking equipment, coiling ropes, polishing brass fixtures already gleaming from yesterday's attention. They work with quiet efficiency, their movements practised and sure despite the ship's gentle rolling. The cold has seeped deeply into your bones despite your heavy coat and gloves. With a last look at the open ocean, somehow more impressive in the clarity of morning light than in the romantic glow of sunset, you turn back toward the interior of the ship. The contrast between the sharp cold of the deck and the warm, still air inside is momentarily dizzying. You pause in the doorway, allowing your body to adjust to the sudden change. The grand staircase is still quiet, though you can hear distant sounds of activity as the ship begins to wake. Steward's footsteps, the clatter of dishes being prepared for breakfast, the muffled voices of crew members going about their duties. Rather than returning immediately to your stateroom, you decide to explore the ship in this rare moment of morning solitude. Without the usual crowd of passengers, Titanic reveals herself differently, more intimate, more appreciable as the marvel of engineering that she is. You wander the promenade deck, your footsteps echoing slightly in the enclosed space. Through the large windows, the rising sun casts golden light across the polished floor, creating patterns that shift and change with the ship's movement. Here and there, a steward polishes brass or arranges chairs, nodding respectfully as you pass. The first-class lounge, usually buzzing with conversation, stands empty and expectant like a theatre before the audience arrives. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and bringing out the rich details of the wood panelling. You take a moment to appreciate the craftsmanship, the intricate carvings, the perfect proportions, the seamless joining of materials. Without the distraction of social obligations, you can see how truly extraordinary this floating palace is. In the reading and writing room, a single elderly gentleman sits by the window, already absorbed in a book despite the early hour. He glances up briefly as you enter, offers a polite nod, and returns to his reading. You browse the bookshelves, running your fingers along the leather-bound spines. Novels, poetry collections, reference works, all provided for passengers' enjoyment. Gradually, the ship comes more fully to life around you. More passengers appear, early risers heading for breakfast or morning constitutionals. The subtle shift from night stillness to day's activity happens so incrementally that it's impossible to pinpoint when one becomes the other, much like the dawn itself. By 7:30, when you return to your stateroom to properly prepare for the day, Titanic has fully awakened. The corridors bustle with stewards delivering morning tea and breakfast trays, passengers emerging for early walks, the ship's daily rhythm reasserting itself after the quiet of night. Emily has prepared your morning bath, another luxury of shipboard life, hot water appearing as if by magic whenever desired. As you soak in the steaming tub, you reflect on the previous day and night, the sunrise just witnessed and the day to come. Sunday aboard Titanic promises its own distinct character. Church services will be held in the dining saloon, transformed temporarily into a chapel with the captain himself often reading the lesson. The day's activities tend toward the gentler and more sedate. Reading, writing letters, quiet conversation. Meals remain elaborate, but the entertainments are more subdued out of nominal respect for the Sabbath. After your bath, dressed in a morning outfit suitable for church services, you make your way to the dining saloon for breakfast. The room is about half full, many passengers choosing to take breakfast in their cabins on Sunday mornings. You join Maggie at a table near the windows, where she's already working through a hearty plate of eggs and smoked haddock. "You're up early," she observes. "I knocked on your door around 6, but Emily said you were already out and about." "I watched the sunrise from the boat deck," you explain, accepting coffee from a hovering steward. "It was magnificent." "Worth freezing for?" "Absolutely. I ran into Mr. Andrews, the ship's designer. He had some interesting things to say about improvements he'd make to the next liner." "Such as?" "More lifeboats, for one thing." You glance out the window at the sunlit ocean, deceptively calm and peaceful in the morning light. He seemed concerned there weren't enough. Maggie follows your gaze, her expression thoughtful. "Let's hope we never need to find out." The conversation turns to plans for the day. Church service at 10:30, perhaps a brisk walk on deck afterward if weather permits, then luncheon. Maggie mentions a book she's borrowed from the ship's library that she thinks you'd enjoy. The normal rhythm of shipboard life reasserts itself, the extraordinary moment of solitude at sunrise already fading into memory. Yet something of that peaceful interlude remains with you, a sense of perspective gained by watching dawn break over the vast Atlantic, a reminder of the thin line between the constructed world of human luxury and the implacable natural world surrounding it. As the day progresses with its gentle Sunday rhythm, this sense of dual awareness stays with you, appreciating the remarkable achievement that is Titanic while simultaneously conscious of her ultimate insignificance against the backdrop of ocean and sky. It's a paradox perfectly embodied in Andrew's expression as he looked out over his creation in the dawn light. Pride mingled with humility, confidence tempered by caution. The church service, held in the dining saloon temporarily transformed with portable altar and hymn books, captures this same curious duality. The captain reads from the Book of Common Prayer, his strong voice carrying easily through the large space. "O eternal Lord God, who alone spreadest out the heavens and rulest the raging of the sea, who hast compassed the waters with bounds until day and night come to an end." The ancient words, speaking of God's dominion over the waters, take on particular resonance when heard in the middle of the Atlantic aboard a ship that represents humanity's most advanced attempt to master those same waters. You glance around at your fellow passengers. Heads bowed, voices joined in hymns, the social distinctions temporarily muted by shared ritual. In this moment, Titanic is not merely a luxury liner, but a community, a temporary society formed of disparate individuals brought together by circumstance and choice. For these few days between Southampton and New York, you exist in this self-contained world, with its own customs and rhythms, its hierarchies and connections, its shared experiences of sunrise and sunset, meals and music, conversations and silences. The day continues its gentle progression, luncheon in the dining saloon, an hour with a borrowed novel in the quiet of your stateroom, tea in the palm court where the orchestra plays subdued classical selections appropriate to Sunday. All throughout there's a tranquillity to the ship that seems distinctive to this day of the week, a collective exhale after the more frenetic socializing of previous days. Evening brings another elaborate dinner, though slightly less formal than the previous night's affair. Afterward, instead of separating into the traditional ladies' lounge and gentlemen's smoking room, many passengers gather in the reception room where the orchestra has indeed set up for dancing as rumoured. The space is not designed as a ballroom, but the furniture has been rearranged to create an adequate dance floor. The orchestra plays a mix of waltzes and the more contemporary two-steps, careful to keep the selections appropriate to Sunday evening sensibilities. Couples move around the floor in measured circles, their formal attire adding elegance to the scene. You dance with several partners. Mr. Bishop, a gentleman from the captain's table whose name you can't quite recall, even Thomas Andrews, who proves surprisingly graceful despite his engineer's practicality. Between dances, you converse with new acquaintances and established friends. The temporary intimacy of shipboard life making it difficult to distinguish between the two. The evening winds down earlier than the previous night, whether due to Sunday propriety or simple fatigue from the accumulation of days at sea. By 11 the reception room has largely emptied, passengers drifting away to their staterooms or for final nightcaps in the smoking room. You find yourself once again drawn to the boat deck, though this time you're not alone. Maggie accompanies you, both of you wrapped in warm coats against the night chill. "I wanted to see the stars once more," she explains as you find a sheltered spot near the officers' quarters. "Tomorrow night might be cloudy, and the night after will be too close to New York, too much light pollution." You look up at the vast canopy of stars, impossibly bright and numerous away from land. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like spilled silver, while familiar constellations appear somehow different, clearer, more defined in the pure air. "Do you ever think about how small we are?" you ask, echoing Andrew's earlier sentiment. All of this luxury, all of our concerns and conversations, and then there's this. You gesture toward the star-filled sky and dark ocean surrounding you. "All the time," Maggie replies, quietly. "That's why I try not to take anything too seriously. We're just specks when you really think about it. Might as well enjoy the ride." You stand together in companionable silence, the only sounds the rush of wind, the distant thrum of engines, and the soft splash of waves against the hull far below. Despite the cold, there's something profoundly peaceful about this moment, suspended between sky and sea, between the old world left behind and the new world ahead, between the social person you present by day and the quieter self that emerges in such moments of solitude. "I should turn in," Maggie eventually says, stifling a yawn. "Church service this morning, dancing tonight. I'm not as young as I pretend to be." You smile at her self-deprecation. "I think I'll stay just a bit longer." Left alone, you take a final few minutes to absorb the night, the cold air filling your lungs, the starlight reflecting off the dark water, the solid deck beneath your feet contradicting the knowledge that you're moving steadily across an abyss of ocean. When the cold finally becomes unbearable, you reluctantly turn back toward the ship's interior. The transition from the stark reality of night at sea to the warmth and luxury of Titanic's first-class spaces is always jarring, like moving between different worlds, different realities. In your stateroom, Emily has turned down your bed and left a small pot of hot chocolate keeping warm on the electric heater. The thoughtful gesture brings a smile to your face, one of countless small comforts that define the first-class experience aboard Titanic. After preparing for bed, you slip between the sheets, their crisp coolness quickly warming to body temperature. The chocolate, rich and sweet, creates a spreading warmth from within that complements the external comfort of your surroundings. As drowsiness begins to claim you, your mind drifts through the day's images. Sunrise over the Atlantic, the captain reading prayers, couples waltzing in the reception room, stars scattered across the night sky. The gentle motion of the ship beneath you becomes part of your drifting consciousness, rocking you towards sleep like a child's cradle. In these last moments before dreams take over, you experience a profound contentment, not just with the luxury surrounding you, but with the extraordinary privilege of this journey itself, to cross between worlds in such comfort, to witness ocean and sky in their countless moods, to exist temporarily in this floating society with its curious mixture of formality and intimacy. Whatever awaits in New York, whatever futures unfold beyond this voyage, this moment aboard Titanic remains perfect in its transience, a brief, shining interlude suspended between continents, between elements, between states of being. Your thoughts grow increasingly diffuse as sleep approaches, the boundaries between consciousness and dreams blurring like the horizon at dusk. The last sensation you register is the subtle vibration of the engines carrying you steadily westward through the night. And as you drift into dreams cushioned in warmth and comfort while Titanic steams onward across the vast Atlantic, there's no way you could know that in just a few short nights this world of luxury and certainty will encounter its own dawn reckoning with the implacable forces of nature, the same forces that painted this morning's sunrise and scattered tonight's stars across the endless sky. For now, there is only peaceful sleep, gentle motion, and the promise of another day aboard the most magnificent vessel ever built. The greatest ocean liner in history carries you through the night, her lights blazing against the darkness, her course set confidently toward a future no one aboard can possibly foresee. Sleep now, wrapped in the warm cocoon of your bed, as the rhythmic motion of the ship gently rocks you deeper into dreams. Let the soft hum of distant engines become the soundtrack to your rest. Tomorrow is another day aboard Titanic, full of new experiences and pleasures, but for now there is only this perfect moment of peace suspended between worlds on the dark, star-lit Atlantic.